one of the most key histories sets in the history of Magic during a very pivotal time when the game took on a major shift from what it was initially, with a very successful
Hey,
sort
Ryan.
of core set experience, which they were starting to tweak and play with as well. But you had that, and you had expansions. And the early expansions were very popular, sold out very quickly, and built the popularity of the game. You had Arabian Nights, which brought in sort of a new separate theme, and Legends, which introduced multicolors, legendary creatures. You had Antiquities, which is where they started their own unique story building. The original Alpha set mainly was just generic fantasy tropes and things that were woven in. It was done well. It gave them a good base to build from for the game mechanically. Um, and then following on after Legends and Antiquities, you started to introduce more world building in terms of the story, what happened after the Brothers' War, and the Dark and Fallen Empires, um, and how it affected the world around them. At this time, the game was growing in popularity. They were printing more and more of each set, but couldn't keep up until they hit Fallen Empires. And then they printed Beyond Demand. And Fallen Empires stuck around on store shelves for a long time and gave them a little breathing room to retool their sets a bit. They'd already had to cut back some of the obscenely powerful cards, and then when they made third edition revised, that eliminated the Power 9, that eliminated a lot of the broken cards, but there were still a lot of really strong ones left. And then fourth edition hit, and this shook things up big. Not only did they cut the remainder of the really strong cards, Wheel of Fortune was finally gone. Demonic Tutor, Solve Ring, gone. They left Mind Twist, they left Balance. They didn't leave many. They brought in Strip Mine. They took out the dual lands, and that was huge.
Hey, JR.
Because as far as I'm aware of all the sort of core sets, base editions they've ever made, fourth edition is pretty unique. Well, I think it's unique in the fact that it had no multicolored lands in it whatsoever. They cut the dual lands. They didn't immediately replace them with anything. And that was one of the changes that was brought in with Ice Age. It partially was remedied too. Well, let's get back to 1995. Fourth edition came out in April and replaced Revised as the current edition of the game. Ice Age released 2 months later in June. A month after that, Chronicles came out. Chronicles was meant as a supplementary set to fourth edition to build the sort of the base card pool that would be used in tournaments. Chronicles had a bunch of reprints from the previous, what they call the Four Horsemen, first four expansions to the game: Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark. And in it, they included things like the Urza's Lands. They included multicolors and legendary creatures. They included that weren't in fourth edition. They also included City of Brass. So City of Brass complemented what came out the month earlier in Ice Age as your colored lands, or for multicolor decks, to help your mana fixing. There are still Birds of Paradise. There are still little cards like that you could use to help you out as well, at least in certain colors.
Not today.
Not right now, Lucas.
Bedtime,
no.
Lucas.
But one of the things I noticed when I looked at Foundations, when I looked at a lot of new sets, is just the amount of multicolor support that's in them is way beyond anything I'm used to. Partially because I started in fourth edition Ice Age.
Bedtime.
And in Ice Age, they were just starting to readjust and bring in multicolor support for decks again into sort of a core set experience. At the time, nobody knew what Ice Age was going to become, in that it's sort of the first block that ever was released. They took the base game, they kept some cards exactly the same, reprinted them with new art. They took some cards and tweaked them because they wanted something similar, but they needed to adjust the power level. They took other cards and ideas and downplayed, like flying, greatly suppressed. Flying had been arguably overpowered in.
I'm just showing some cards.
Okay.
Sorry.
Arguably overpowered in the base set. Most of the strongest creatures were flying creatures, especially 4/4s. Like an air elemental was sort of a baseline, decent creature. Anything better than that? So your Singear Vampires, your Serra Angels, very popular. Mahamati Djinn, Shivan Dragon. If you wanted something cheaper, it was probably a Hypnotic Spectre or a Granite Gargoyle, something like that. Maybe a Dragon Whelp
I always like the card.
or a Phantom Monster.
The one that I showed you.
Oh, there's lots of good cards out there. And we'll get to a bunch of cards too.
Yeah.
I don't have a complete set of Ice Age. I don't have anywhere near a complete set of Ice Age. A lot of the cards that I'm familiar with, that I started playing with, I thought I had copies and I couldn't find them. But we'll go through some of that. I do have a couple of starter decks. And I've got 2 sealed ones here. We'll open one of them up.
The lighting might
But
oh, sorry.
for the start of a block, I think they did well. The theming, it was still very much the same game, same basic core, but like I said, they tweaked some mechanics, and switching to a world locked in ice, an ice age brought on by the Brothers' War from climate change due to all these massive things, was quite a novel concept at the time. And living in Canada, I'm very aware how winter can change how things work, can change the landscape, can make things a little bit more difficult. And that was working thematically with the approach they were taking in the card design as well. You know what? Let's flip the camera and get some more of the cards focused here. Interestingly, they had a couple of different printings in terms of the mechanics of printing the set. They were starting to print both in the United States and Belgium at this time. I think I heard it was about 1/3 USA and 2/3 still from Belgium at this point. So here's the rule book. I'll just show the cover. This was what the original covers looked like, and then they put this more colorful sleeve over them, more or less. And the examples in the book still reference cards from the base game, 4th edition, revised sort of things.
Andrew loves mini books.
Oh yeah, me too. I've always loved and try to keep a couple of these handy for reference. Yeah, see, there's Skaith Zombies right at the bottom of the page. That's not in this set. That's from the base set, revised 4th edition, right back to Alpha. And there's many examples. Yeah, Benelish Hero. Again, not in this set.
Oh, sorry.
But the ideas are there. And so they reused a lot of the stuff. It felt very much similar. There's a duelist.
Just make a pile over there.
And you can see...
Sorry.
Oh, that's... So it has been many centuries since the war between Urza and Mishra, this world-building element. The battered landscape has become a frozen desert, and the creatures of the world of Dominaria struggle to survive. One society has risen out of the cold chaos, defending itself against both the brutal forces of nature and the attacks of nomadic tribes that have emerged in the surrounding wastelands. And through it all, a twisted necromancer flourishes in the deep winter, intent on using his powers to keep the world dark and cold. You may have the skills to survive, but do you have the spirit to withstand the icy wilderness of Dominaria's Ice Age?
Why is this?
You can play Ice Age by itself. That was new. Or as a standard expansion for Magic the Gathering. So... And again, original price for a starter deck. Look at that. $13 Canadian, $9 American. And actually, they changed in the middle of the print run. I think it was originally $8 US, and then they upped it to $9 partway through the print run, as I've heard elsewhere.
I missed those prices.
Yeah, me too. No kidding. Nowadays, a booster pack can run in that range.
You have if you want to.
So yeah, the box art very similar to 4th edition revised boxes, but again with that frosted overlook. And this is the time that my brother and I started playing. He started a little bit before I did, and we got 2 decks. I recall, and basically, sort of split the cards to make 2 functional decks. One got 3 colors, the other got 2 colors, and had to build them out that way. It was very different. These decks, I should say, are what remains of a little experiment I did. I saw at the time these old starter decks had sort of fallen out of favor. They'd replaced them with tournament packs, which had, I think, 75 cards instead of 60 and featured a little bit more basic land, stuff like that.
I was wondering what one of the spells made of.
So the older sets that weren't in rotation
That time as well.
for the main tournament scene anymore were fairly cheap at the time. So I picked up 4 Ice Age starter decks, 4 Mirage starter decks, and 4 Urza Saga starter decks for a fairly reasonable price. And I opened most of them looking for cards that I didn't have many of at the time, except 2 of the Ice Age ones, which I have left. We'll open one of those tonight. I hadn't decided whether I wanted to start with that or save it towards the end, and usually I save opening stuff towards the end, so
I don't know.
probably lean that way, I guess. But yeah, this one is one that I had opened. It had some other sealed product at the time, and some of it somewhat contemporary. So some alliances, some fallen empires, a little bit before, a little bit after, and I tried building a deck out of it. So this is just a sample of, to try to find some cards for the discussion. The things I was doing was looking through old deck boxes and finding stuff. So here we have some alliances cards mixed with some Ice Age cards. These 2 sets were designed to work together. They lumped homelands in with them, which was never designed to be part of this block thematically or anything else. Just so there would be 3 sets to match what they did with Mirage, which was a follow-up. And if you're going to do these standalone sets, the first one you went with an ice-based theme, Mirage followed it up with a tropical environment. A brand new sort of approach, but it still brought back old elements like the Digins and Afrits. And it too had sort of 2 main sets, and then the third was a bit of an oddball. It was designed more to go with it for sure, but the Weatherlight was more introducing the story element that was going to carry over into Tempest block, more than the other 2 sets, Mirage and Visions. It wasn't as big an element at the time. So yeah, there's Deadly Insect. Oh look, there's a Dire Wolves. Abyssal Spectre. Throw one of that up here because I don't think I had one of those in that pile. Gangrenous Zombies. There we go. There's another one from the block. So we had Chill to the Bone from Cold Snap, which they came out with a decade later to replace Homelands and try and finish out the Ice Age block. An interesting way of doing things. They had to make some sacrifices to get that done that way. Jeweled Amulet, Feast of Famine. Again, these classic sort of arts. And again, look at a card like this, Morphiend. Basically, they took a well-known existing card that was popular and saw some play in Bog Wraith, and they just made it a fiend, gave it a new art, new name, but same basic stats, exact same casting cost, power and toughness, abilities. And most of these cards, especially at the common and uncommon, where most of the exposure is, were fairly simple. Usually it's the rares that had more rules text. So that gave you more room not only in the art depiction, but in the text box for flavor text, right? And that helps your world building substantially. It lets people's imagination run with a bit of story text. So Let them close the gates of Krov from dusk till dawn, if they so choose. It matters not. My fiends shall yet rend their flesh from their bones. Limdul the necromancer. So this is the big bad guy, and many of the tools he had at his disposal. So again, M10 to give you an idea of probably around the time that I was doing this little project. Orcish cannoneers. Again, this was Orcish artillery, just rebranded. So now, if you wanted to, you could have four. From before, you could have 4 bog wraiths in your deck. Now you could run essentially 8 with the Morfiend or Orcish cannoneers. You could have your 8 Orcish artillery basically in your deck. It's a thankless job, and you'll probably die in an explosion, but the pay is pretty good.
Oh, man.
Yeah, just amusing little flavor text like that. Snow-covered lands
That's
introduced. Pretty. They didn't do a whole lot with them. Here's an Orcish farmer.
It kind of looks like it's big.
Yeah, a little bit. Target land becomes a swamp until its controller's next end step. So here's some interaction that, could be useful if you're playing a 2-color deck and you want your own lands to be able to produce black, or if you're playing creatures with Swamp Walk like the Morfiend and you want your opponent to have a swamp. Pretty simple. Can use it a couple of different ways. Yes, the farmers keep our soldiers fed, but why do they have to make every battlefield a pig pen? And it's a Orcish captain, Toothlicker. There you go. Here's a Rhyme Dryad. Now, this one is a little different. It's not just a straight-up reprint with a name change. Shanonan Dryads was in Alpha. It was a 1/1 for a green with Forest Walk. This one they gave a little bit better base stats. You get a 1/2 for your 1 green. But instead of Forest Walk, it's Snow-covered Forest Walk. More specific, not going to come up as often, but a very similar card. The Dryads told us to stay, as no new horrors would come when it was so cold. 3 of us left anyway. The rest believed their lies, and their skeletons weren't found until the thaw. Like I said, Ice Age is still a fairly dark set, coming after Fallen Empires and the Dark, dealing with that downtrodden world. Some of the cards are downright gruesome in some respects. So it's not... It brightened as time went on with alliances. 4th edition had less of that, but...
it doesn't seem like there's any cards that are really that valuable in this set, though.
No, there aren't. Surprisingly. Some cards have come up a bit, especially some of the commons and uncommons that have become popular, but a lot of them... this is an alliances card.
Out of what's
and
on
here's
TCG Player right now, the most valuable card is the Dark Car Wastes.
Yeah, those original Pain lands have been through quite a cycle. They were down to only being worth a couple of bucks. When they first came out, they were worth $5 or $6. And then they dropped when they went out of rotation. They'd been reprinted multiple times. Like I said, 4th edition had no multicolored lands. But they were put into 5th and 6th edition, I think, after Ice Age. And they stayed around for a long time, those Pain lands. There's a Balduvian Barbarians. No flavor text at all. Now, Hurloon Minotaur was the same casting cost for a 2/3. This is a 3/2 for the same casting cost. So similar, but different. Barbarian raiders were a concern to those living in the northwest provinces. But the Sky Knights never dealt with the problem in a systematic way. They thought of the barbarians as an amusing model of their forebears' culture. And again, that comes up. I love these lands, by the way. I think that Ice Age ticks a lot of boxes for me. The art has got sort of a realistic edge to it that I like in many cases, not all. But I like the realism of the snow-covered element. They didn't do, like I said, a whole lot with it initially, but it does come up. It was a last-minute addition, from what I've heard. But I just like the looks of them. I love the fact that you got the black border, the classic framing. the fact that the text box actually tells you what basic lands do instead of just having a mana symbol there. I think that's great. I don't know why they ever went away from that. And yeah, here's a woolly mammoth. And this would tie back even to the cards like from Arabian Nights. You had Elephant's Graveyard that could regenerate your war elephant. Well, now you had mammoths too to go with it. So gains trample as long as you control any snow-covered lands. Mammoths may be good to ride on, but they're certainly bad to fall off of. There's a journal entry from Disa the Restless, who apparently did a lot of traveling. Arctic Neshoba, again from Cold Snap. Alliances. There's an Auroch.
That's fun.
Yeah. They made several more Aurochs. I think at least 3 different ones were added in Cold Snap. Before that, this was the only Auroch that had been printed. 4 cost for a 3/2 trample. Not that impressive. When attacking, Aurochs gets +1/+0 for each other Aurochs that attacks. So yeah, you need to have at least 2 for this to be as good as a War Mammoth. And that's tricky to set up. But, like I said, it just sort of sat there in its vacuum until a decade later when they made Bull Aurochs, an Auroch Herd, and Rhymewine Auroch, I think, something like that. And all of a sudden, it became, theoretically, a much more playable creature type with more support. But even then, I never did get an Auroch deck properly off the ground to try. Still one day I'd like to try. Anyway, so basically that's what I was doing, was going through piles like this, finding some of my old Ice Age cards. And so there's a lot of cards. Like I couldn't find a Goblin Zappers. I couldn't find several others.
Oh, should we turn that on?
Oh, probably. We got sun coming in the front window, streaming right across the table. That's not great either.
Well, yeah, but
the sun doesn't set until really late here this time of year. That's kind of interesting and not very useful. Oh, here's the other half of the cards that were in that box, by the way. Mirage, mainly, from, like I said, I'd had some Mirage starters. So this is the next block that followed Ice Age, and it's got a tropical theme to it. So...
yeah, sunglasses, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good thing we're not sitting
So we're not really talking about this one today, but...
Oh, hey, I just had a thought. Since we're celebrating the 30th anniversary of Ice Age, maybe we should give away our last 5 memberships.
Oh, sure, why not?
For the month.
So, let's, take a quick look at some of the basic lands, just because there's one thing in particular I want to mention, and that is on the plains. Christopher Rush, well-known magic artist, and he made the art for the plains so that it was a panoramic view. One, the flock of birds there in the hill, went into the next, even to the snow-covered plains here. They all tie together, and you got a snow-covered moonlit scene going onto a grassy field with the clouds coming in and the dawn. So you got day, light by the time you get to the very end. It's really an interesting scene that I appreciate, but didn't pick up on for years. It's a neat touch. Anyhow, set those off to the side. And yeah, like I said, we'll do this discussion as we go basically through. There were lots of key cards that they decided were useful enough that they wanted to reprint. And some of them they reprinted directly, just with new art. And some of them were copies. So one of the very popular things from Fallen Empires was the Order of Litber. It was used in tournaments. And they made a Ice Age version as an uncommon. Order of the White Shield. Same basic stats, 2 white. The original ones was a cleric, but creature types didn't have as much an effect unless it was something like goblins, merfolk, or zombies, where there was specific support cards like lords that had been printed. Most of the other times, only very niche with things affected. Occasionally, more and more of that was creeping in, though. You got protection from black. Pay a white to give it first strike, or pay 2 white. That would probably be helpful to give it +1/+0 until end of turn. Not as efficient as fire breathing, but still useful when you had a lot of mana. Shall we turn away a worthy soul because his parents were peasants? I think not. Yes, and here's a reused sleeve. Let's get rid of that because it's just impeding the view of the art. We got a Keljoran Warrior. Now, this was Benalashiro. Benalashiro, 1/1 banding for 1 white. Very handy 1-drop. And maybe if you didn't have a Savannah Lion, this would probably be your next best play. Tundra Wolves, maybe, but for a 1/1 white creature, this you had trouble doing better. I used to have a personal like for things like Acacian Javelineers, but that's pretty niche. But the banding ability can be very strong. It's fallen off a long time ago now. Give me 1,000 such warriors, and I could change the world. And yeah, banding gets better in groups. Cards like Disenchant. They didn't want you, oddly enough, running 8 Disenchants. So they just printed the exact same card, the exact same title, just gave it new artwork. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Instant. This was a tournament playable card. People used to main deck these because artifacts and enchantments were very troublesome and very prevalent. Creatures were less powerful, and so they were more powerful. Go figure. I implore you not to forget the horrors of the past. Would you have us start the Brothers' War anew? Sorin Relicbane, Soldva Heretic. And then here's the Sky Knights who were mentioned before. So Keljoran Sky Captain is a 2/2 flying, first strike, and banding for 5. So you can see this is a flying creature, but compared to a 5-cost creature like Sarah Angel, which was flying, attacking does not cost a tap, so vigilance in today's terms, it was a 4/4 for 5. This is way smaller. It's got a little bit more in the way of abilities going on, but they definitely tuned down the flyers quite a bit here. If we do our duty and uphold our honor, Keljor shall stand for 1,000 years. Especially on the higher end, there was no dragon. Of all the popular creatures, they made a version of Monty Djinn, except with the downside of letting your opponent draw cards when you attacked. They made a version of Singular Vampire, except it didn't fly, and it was a 3/3 for your 5, I think. They made a Angel, but it costs 7 instead of 5.
I like that card. The art's really neat.
Yeah, and its counterpart here, the regular Keljoran Sky Knight, I like the art on this one even better. It doesn't show as good a view of the night,
so
obviously.
These supposed to be giant birds?
Yeah, these were Astirs, which, yeah, it says right in here in the flavor text. My Astir is my most trusted ally. We fight as one and live as one, and we shall die as one. There's the Sky Knight. And again, same 3 abilities, banding, flying, first strike, a 1/1, but costs 2 less, so it's a 3 cost for your 1/1 flying with all these abilities. And, yeah, a couple of those. Shield Bearer, a 0/3 banding for 2. You have almost completed your 4 years, my son. You shall soon you shall be a Sky Knight.
Scaled worm, says Ryan.
Yeah, that was in there too. That was, again, they took Crawworm. They made it a little bit stronger, but also increased the casting cost by 2. Yeah, the art on this one is amazing. I've always liked this. You got the hunter there and the bear sort of stalking him. 1 white enchant creature. How to pronounce it, I'm still not sure. Liga. Anyway. When it comes into play, put 4 healing counters on it. It's an enchant creature. And you can remove a healing counter from it to prevent 1 damage to the creature it's enchanting, and you can pay 4 to put a healing counter on it. So basically, you can prevent damage over time to your creature to keep it alive. It's an interesting card. Didn't see a whole lot of play, but I did like the concept, and trying to figure out how to make these cards work was always something neat. So here's the Arctic Foxes. 1/1 for 2. If defending player controls any snow-covered lands, no creature with power greater than 1 may be assigned to block. The Arctic Foxes. And those foxes are wily, swift, and ferocious. They are warriors of the snows.
That's a nice card, too.
It is a nice card. And again, the plural in the summon foxes. The formatting is a little bit not what you would see on today's cards. Mark Poole again.
Ooh.
Yeah, here's the Adarkar Unicorn.
I want it.
It's nice. 2/2 for 3. And you can tap it to add either blue or blue and 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. This mana is usable only for cumulative upkeep.
It looks more like a cat.
They had upkeeps before.
The fox?
Cumulative upkeep was one of the new things they added. And again, this helped slow down the game, reduce the power level because it's a downside. But honestly, if they used it today, I think it would be a little bit better. A lot of the cards, they seem to have power crept a bit too much now. So, and now they do more creative things with it than they did back then too. There is no nobler creature in all of Terrasayer. That's General Varkeld.
I'd like that as the unicorn as a wall art, like a big.
Would be neat. Now these scarabs, I think they're uncommons, and there was one for every color. Enchant creature for 1 white. In the base set, they had wards, which were 1 white creature enchantments that gave your creature protection from each of the colors. They replaced them with these. Target creature gets +2/+2 as long as any opponent controls any black cards. That creature cannot be blocked by black creatures. So not as brutal against it as just giving it straight protection from the color, but still, they still have options for removal on this one. But it does give it a power and toughness buff. Blessed Wine. This is another one of the gimmicks that they added, was this draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. This was the earliest version of what they later called a cantrip, which is a card that when you play it, lets you draw a card to replace itself. Except these early ones were delayed, so it was the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. I guess they figured that was going to be too strong to just put on immediately. This is one of the cheesiest versions of it. 1 white and 1, so 2 to gain 1 life and draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. It doesn't really do a whole lot, unless maybe you stuck it on an Ice-Crown Scepter, but then there's other better things you could do that with that too. And then if you're playing this every turn then on a Scepter, gaining a life and drawing a card every turn would be pretty strong, but that's a very niche case. May the bounty of Keld enrich your days. We've got Warning. Great big horn there. Target attacking creature deals no damage in combat this turn. So, unlike Fog, or at this time they had printed Darkness and Holy Day as well. Those were just blanket creatures don't deal damage this turn in combat, or maybe at all. I forget exactly the wording. But this one is specific. Target attacking creature deals no damage in combat this turn, but you could still block it and kill it off if you wanted to. So it's got some usefulness that way too, even if it is less powerful and not stopping their whole side, for example. The folk of Carpusan Mountains are impossible to ambush. Again, another one that was around from Alpha, but they just gave it same name, new art. Regenerate target creature for 1 white. Sometimes a soul is not ready to complete its journey to the next world. This one I used to actually play sometimes. Aronson's Aura. enchantment for 3. You can pay a white and sacrifice an enchantment to destroy target enchantment. So if you had some extra enchantments that weren't being useful, or even itself in a pinch, it could be very handy to get rid of very troublesome enchantments. There were a lot of them around. Or you can pay 5.
Void.
Hey, Void, thanks for coming. Or you can pay 5, including 2 blue, to counter an enchantment. So that was an extra little effect if the to keep the enchantments from hitting the table at all if you had a lot of extra mana. I have my faith, I have my prayers, but if push comes to shove, I've also got a little something extra. And speaking of extra enchantments that might not be in your deck but not actually doing anything depending who you're playing, Circular Protections came back. These were considered such an important part of the game, they wanted them in this new standalone set. And again, same titles, but you got Circular Protection. Here's the white version. They're all enchantments for 2 that hang around, and you can pay 1 to prevent all damage from you from a white source, for each color, basically. And you have to pay for each time you want to prevent the damage for each creature. So again, here's the white art. Here's the green art. I don't quite get the frogs and the sort of... This looks almost like a red symbol, but... here's the black art, which I think is probably one of the better ones technically, but it's for a white card, it looks a little bit strange to me. But it's keeping the darkness out, I guess. Circular Protection blue. And Circular Protection red is probably the most dynamic art of the bunch. And also one of the more popular, because red was very much direct damage and damage dealing color, so was one of the more useful more often against that particular color. And red didn't have a way to destroy enchantments either, which made this particularly annoying in those cases. Versatile in pretty much every non-specialty set. Yeah. And we've got Rally. The art on this reminds me a lot of Acacian Skirmishers from Fallen Empires. 2 white for an instant. All blocking creatures get +1/+1 until end of turn. Stand your ground, troops. This shall be our finest hour. Heather Hudson. And then the Foglios were still very much active, producing art for lots of cards. Cooperation. There's a fun little piece of art for this one. Target creature gains banding. They also made an artifact that could give creatures banding. They were really pushing banding, and honestly, it's a strong ability, but I guess they just got tired of having to explain it. So that's why I played red-blue decks. Instants, cheap, fast damage, especially like 6/3 fire that only needs 2 red energy specifically to cast. Yeah. White was definitely not one of the more aggressive colors. Interrupts, I should say. They hadn't been lumped in with instants yet, had they? No, they had not. And they hadn't come up with the mana source category either yet. Here's Heal. That sort of goes to the counterpart of Blessed Wine. 1 white, instant, prevent 1 damage to any creature or player. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So this was generally the more useful one, because instead of just gaining a life, you could prevent the damage or to a creature or yourself. Sometimes even the smallest boon can save a life. I maybe
used to have to played a bit a lot.
Yeah. Couldn't find the Elvish Healer, but here's the Kelshinko Ranger. Elvish Healer, by the way, was similar to Samite Healer, but with some extra... Ooh, you can see
the damage on that one?
Damage on this one.
That was what you got out of that binder,
yeah,
right?
This is one I found out of a binder from somebody. Some of these are in repulsive shape, to be honest. But such is life. They're well-played cards that have some history to them. Anyway, a 1/1 ranger for 1
It's
white.
almost like they
Pay
threw a
2.
dart at it.
Target green creature. No, it's like it got stepped on and there was sand on the floor or something. Anyway, first strike until end of gains first strike until end of turn. So this was one that's trying to encourage you to use white and green together, basically. Rangers are not trained by the elves. Rangers not trained by the elves are just not the same. There you go. There's the Prismatic Ward. When Prismatic Ward comes into play, choose a color. All damage dealt to the target creature by sources of that color is reduced to 0.
Ooh, it looks like a little like bite marks. It did kind of look like bite marks, like ferret bite marks almost.
Almost. Except then it would have been on indented on both sides. But these of all spells must have a common components I can isolate and use. And then we've got, this is not a common. Here's a Keldron Royal Guard.
Love that art for Prismatic Ward, says Void.
It is a nice one for sure. And this was the counterpart of Veteran Bodyguard, which was a 2/5 for the same casting cost, which any damage from unblocked creatures was just redirected to it. This you have to tap it and redirect to Keldron Royal Guard all damage dealt to you from unblocked creatures this turn. So a little bit less powerful than the Veteran Bodyguard. Again, having to activate to get the effect. Honorable in battle, generous in death. Motto of the Keldron Royal Guard. So there's white. Now, one of the more infamous cards for blue at this time was Control Magic. So, they wanted to power it down a little bit, not make it unplayable. They made a different version. So, in that sense, you could run 4 copies of each and have a total of 8 of this effect in your deck. But this one had very distinct differences. So, Control Magic was 2 blue and 2. So this was easier to splash, but during your upkeep, pay 1 in a blue or Bury Binding Grasp. This gave it an upkeep, or else it would disappear on you, and they'd get their creature back. Gain control of target creature. Upkeep costs were annoying on it. Yeah. I did like this one too. Getting that extra +0/+1, like I said, at this time, some of the more common creatures to play were things like 4/4 flyers. So air elementals, Sarah Angels, Singular Vampires.
Those a couple dragons.
If you stole one of those from your opponent, getting an extra toughness would make you win the fight and survive on top of that.
Binding Grass was one of my many nicknames in high school, says JR.
Nice.
Is that a couple of different dragons?
Yeah, basically.
That's really cool.
They're not specific ones, but it shows 2 dragons fighting each other. So
I would steal this card if I had a dragon.
what I want, I take. Gutha's Ebba's daughter. Keldron Royal Mage.
What I want, I take?
That's the flavor text.
What I want, I take.
Now, this one, at the time, didn't do much, but it's become very popular in Commander since then. Mystic Remora. 1 blue, cumulative upkeep of 1. Whenever target opponent successfully casts a non-creature spell, you may draw a card. That player may pay 4 to counter this effect. Paying 4 extra to stop you from drawing a card is huge and honestly isn't going to come up a whole lot. So you'll probably get some extra cards, especially in a multiplayer game. And yeah, cumulative upkeep 1 is annoying, but it's not as bad as a lot of the other cumulative upkeeps. It's pretty easy to keep this around for a couple turns. And like I said, when every other player at the table in a multiplayer game is getting a turn and you're getting opportunities, this will usually get you a lot of advantage. Singular Vampire and Sarah Angel. Oh man, I even love a nice looking Unlimited. I miss some of the old art. Yeah, the old art was great. I do think that the art in Ice Age, like I said, there was a tonal shift, thematic shift, but it was still holding it up pretty good. This is actually a rare. Magical Hack and Sleight of Mind. They were around from Alpha, and they used to be all kinds of nastiness you could do with those. Sleight of Mind made the trip over to Ice Age. I don't think Magical Hack did. But an interrupt, change the text to target spell or permanent, so you can change spells while they're on the stack. by replacing all instances of one color word with another. The hack changed land types. So people would play Karma, which makes your opponent lose life for each swamp they control, and then just hack it over to whatever lands they did have in play. This doesn't do that, but this is replacing color instances. So you could change a protection from blue to a protection from red if they have red things, or other nasty similar effects. Or change counter black spells to counter blue spells, like the example there. Anyway, it's neat art, and it's an interesting effect to have. Power Sync, again, reprint. This is just straight over from the core set originally. Counter a spell unless that spell's caster pays extra mana, depending on how much extra you put in. Excuse me. That player must empty their pool until it's all paid, so it can force them to tap out, which is very handy in old stasis decks, which stasis did not make the jump.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's an eye in the middle of a storm, sucking up all the mana, and you can see thematically there's island, mountain, plains with a river, forests, swamp, just sucking in all the types.
Wow.
It's a neat concept.
And the eye of the storm, the eye.
Yeah. Here's another one that's become very popular for tournament play, Brainstorm. This was the first printing of it. And this was meant to be a fixed version of Ancestral Recall, which was just way too powerful. And that was a blue as an instant to draw 3 cards. They wanted to make it less powerful. And so this is draw 3 cards, then take 2 cards from your hand and put them on top of your library in any order. So you only get 1 extra card, but you get to see a bit, and you get to manipulate the top card of your deck. That's still doing an awful lot. And now with other mechanics that care about what's on top of your deck, this is very strong. Do you want another copy of Armageddon? Oh boy. Probably not, to be honest. I don't use that card a whole lot. I have run it in a couple decks. I think I've got about 3 copies of it already, and for the amount I use it, that's about right. Anyway. But yeah, Brainstorm. I reeled from the blow, and then suddenly I knew exactly what to do. Within moments, the victory was mine. Gertha Ebersdottir. And this flavor text plays in very nicely with the next card because, oh no, what are they going to do? Well, let's brainstorm and come up with an idea. And what's the idea? Counterspell. A reprint again, except they took it. Counterspell in 4th edition and right to Alpha had been an uncommon. This time they printed it at common. So, again, the base 2-mana counter target spell, hard counter, which nowadays is considered too powerful, at the time was considered ubiquitous. This is the standard counter spell. Anything else is to be compared to, and this is where the power level should be. Basically. The duel was going badly for me, and Zur thought I was finished. He boasted that he would eat my soul, but all he ate were his words. And again, Gertha Ebersdottir. So again, that could play right into this then. I reeled and then
counterspell always good, says Word.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's interesting art.
Words of Undoing. So an instant, return target creature to its owner's hand. Return any white enchantments you own on that creature to your owner, to your hand. So this is just a plain upgrade to Unsummon. It's Unsummon with a bonus. Now that's a very specific bonus that's not going to come up very much often unless you're playing a white-blue deck that has a habit of wanting to put white enchantments on your opponent's creatures. It can come up, but it's not the most common thing. But still, it is more value than you'd get out of regular Unsummon. It was in Urza's journals that I finally found the secret at the core of the summonings. Then we've got an Iceberg. 2 blue and X. When Iceberg comes into play, put X ice counters on it. You can pay 3 to put an ice counter on Iceberg as well to build it up. And you can pay 0 to remove an ice counter from Iceberg to add 1 colorless mana to your mana pool. So it's a way to store mana for a later turn. as an enchantment. You got Portent. This is similar in some respects to Brainstorm. 1 blue. It's a sorcery, though. Look at the top 3 cards of target player's library, so you can do this to your opponent's stuff. Then either shuffle that library or put those 3 cards on top of the library in any order. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So you do get a card draw out of it. You can use it to manipulate the top of your own deck, similar to Brainstorm, but at sorcery speed. Or you can look at your opponent and mess with their top cards. So it's interesting. It's similar in that way to what's the green card from Alpha? It's got a very evolution type name to it. What is it called? Natural Selection. In green for 1 green mana. Anyways, Zurin Spellcaster. This is Prodigal Sorcerer.
Oh, that looks cool.
Yeah, Prodigal Sorcerer was a very popular card. They nicknamed it Tim and all that. But now you could run more of them. And this started off a whole deck archetype. Whereas before, Prodigal Sorcerer was a useful creature.
Tim?
Yep, Tim. So now with this, and then later printings, because in Homelands they made some creatures that you could pay mana and tap. And there was Crimson Masticore from Legends and things like that. So sometimes people would try and make decks that just ran lots and lots of these. And if you got enough of them in play, you could just kill off whatever hit the board, basically. And if nothing hit the board, just hit your opponent directly. So it's a 1/1 for 3, and you can tap it to do a damage to target creature or player. Which was the only things you could deal damage to, basically, at the time.
We have a void card coming up.
A mage must be precise as well as potent, cautious as well as clever. Zero the Enchanter.
We have a void card coming up.
We do. Force Void. So it's an interrupt for 3. Counter target spell unless that spell's caster pays an additional 1. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So basically it's a power sink, or similar to a power sink, except specifically it's just for 1. So if they tap out to play something, you can do that, and you get to draw a card. Doesn't come up very often, but if you do get that situation to come up, stopping their spell and drawing a card is great value. Mind and Spirit are 1, a barrier not readily passed. We got a Snowfall.
Oh, interesting.
It is interesting.
It's a weird kind of too, though.
It is. Enchantment for 3, cumulative upkeep 1 blue. Islands may produce an additional blue when tapped for mana. This mana is usable only for cumulative upkeep. Snow-covered islands may produce either an additional 2 blue or an additional 1 blue when tapped for mana. And again, only usable for cumulative upkeep. So it helps you pay for itself, or other things.
The look that character has on his face almost makes me think of what people in Florida would be like if they got a dump of snow all of a sudden.
Could be, especially if the snow is, up to your tummy, basically.
It's like, what is this craziness?
Next we got Enervate. Tap target artifact, creature, or land. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So this is very similar to Twiddle, except Twiddle could tap or untap something. But this one just taps, but you can draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So again, this is would be handy on an Isochron Scepter or something. But on its own, yeah, you can find cases where it'll be annoying, but will it be really enough value? Well, it depends what you draw into. Worlds turn in crucial moments of decision. Make your choice. And then we've got Infuse, another instant for 3. Untap target artifact, creature, or land. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So they took the Twiddle effect, split it in 2 between these 2 cards. Each of the 2 sides adds a card draw, but they cost 2 and 3 respectively instead of 1 to get either effect. But you do get the extra card draws. The potential for change lies in all things. Knowing a thing's nature, know its possibilities, and know it anew. We've got Errant Minion. I used to use this very occasionally. Actually, I've tried out most of these cards at some point. Enchant creature for 3. During enchanted creature's controller's upkeep, errant minion deals 2 damage to him or her. He or she may pay 1 for each of the damage they wish to prevent from errant minions. So basically, you're giving it an upkeep of 2, and for each they don't use, you get to deal damage to them if the creature's hanging around. But that's the rub. Usually they'll find a way to trade the creature off in combat or something. Arnjolt's Ascent. So here you have got an enchantment for 3, cumulative upkeep of blue. Target creature gains flying until end of turn. So you can give creatures flying. And again, less creatures just had flying at this time. Blinking Spirit was a popular one, which I don't have in these piles. With flying, was it 2/2 flying for 4, and you could bounce it to your hand when you wanted to have it avoid removal, basically. The dreams of a child fulfilled. The wind on my brow, the air beneath my feet. There's Clairvoyance. 1 blue instant. Cool. Look at target player's hand. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep.
That almost looks like a cloud, like a wispy cloud up there, but then you see like the face.
Exactly.
That's really cool.
It is neat, and then you've got the little soldier down, or hunter down there at the bottom. It's interesting because this is an effect which they later put on a card called Gitaxian Probe, but with Phyrexian mana, so it could be paid with 2 life instead of a blue. And that card became popular. This card never really was. People didn't value looking at players' hands as much at this point. Sometimes used to run glasses of Verza, but I was a weirdo. Glacial Wall, 0/7 for 3. We are farther west than any could have imagined possible, but I still wish to press on. Unfortunately, huge walls of ice block further travel. We can't believe they are natural. These are the Restless again. Updraft. Target creature gains flying until end of turn as an instant. So this is jump. And draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. And it costs 1 more because you're drawing a card. It's a trade-off, but drawing a card for an extra 1 mana isn't the worst trade-off you can make. The power of flight has but 1 equal in battle. Surprise. Understanding how to use both is a key to victory.
That one looks cool too.
It does. And we've got Snow Devil.
Oh, interesting.
Enchant creature. Target creature gains flying. As long as you control any snow-covered lands, that creature also gains first strike when blocking. Give me wings to fly and speed to strike. In return, the glory I earn shall be yours.
Oh, come on.
Then we've got a Balduvian Conjurer. This one is again in horrific shape.
Ooh.
Look at that corner, man. A wizard for 2 for 0/2. And you can tap it. Target snow-covered land becomes a 2/2 creature until end of turn. That still counts as a land, but cannot be tapped for mana if it came into play on a side this turn. So you can either turn your opponent's lands into creatures to make it easier to kill them, if they're snow-covered, or you can animate your own lands to attack with. There's a few ways you can use this card. A lot of things that affect snowlands didn't see a whole lot of play, but one that my brother used to use once he got a little bit more going on was Arkham's Weathervane, which was an artifact that you could pay 2, and it cost 2. You could pay 2 and tap it to turn lands into snow-covered lands, or from snow-covered lands into non-snow-covered. So we would use that to make all your opponent's lands snow-covered. And then you would drop Cold Snap, which deals them a damage for each snow-covered land they control. And as an enchantment that sticks around. And so, yeah, that was nasty. But there was more time. The games were a little slower. You had more times to set things up then. Hydroblast. This is basically a reprint of Blue Elemental Blast, except with a few very minor tweaks. So 1 blue is an instant, counter target spell if it's red, or destroy target permanent if it's red. the subtlety and the change, other than the name and the art, comes in the fact that the other one, I think, was just target a spell, and if it's red, you can counter it or destroy it. So you could use it on things that aren't red, and it just wouldn't do anything, whereas this one has to only target something that's red. Something like that. Heed the lessons of our time. The forms of water may move the land itself and hold captive the fires within. Here's an Essence Flare. Again, Richard Kane Ferguson, very well-known artist. 1 blue. Target creature gets +2 attack. During its each of its controllers' upkeep, put a -0, -1 counter on the creature. These counters remain even if Essence Filter is removed. So this is sort of a slightly powered down or fixed version of Unstable Mutation from Arabian Nights.
Is that two dragons? Or...
Never underestimate the power of the Soul Unleashed. Yeah,
or is one an angel or something? The white one, is that a dragon? Or what is that?
I'm not sure.
The big green one's a dragon.
I'm not sure.
Can I just take a closer look at it?
Yeah. Then we've got Mist Folk. I used to like these. There weren't a lot of them. 2 blue for a 1/2, and you can pay a blue to counter a spell that targets Mist Folk. So it's an early version of sort of a shroud effect that makes it hard to get rid
dragon.
of.
No, it's a person or an angel or something.
Yeah. Seems to be holding out there. Although my official log will state that there is no evidence pointing to the existence of the Mistfolk, my certainty is lessened by the cursed consistency of the expedition's eyewitness accounts. Then we've got Ray of Command. Another 4-cost, instant. Untap target creature an opponent controls and gain control of it until end of turn. That creature can attack or use abilities that require tapping as part of the activation. When you lose control of the creature, tap it. So this could actually be very annoying because, you know, you're gaining control of your opponent's creatures temporarily. This bailed me out in a lot of games because my opponent would attack me with, say, 2 or 3 creatures. I would use this to untap and take control of the biggest one, use it to block one of the smaller ones and kill it off. And then, when I finally had to give it back, it came into play tapped, so that slowed him down even further. Yeah. Depending on the timing and how you played this, it could be very effective. But 4 is a lot for that sort of trick these days. Icy Prison. I had a friend who used these rather annoyingly. So, 2 blue enchantment. When Icy Prison comes into play, remove target creature from the game. When Icy Prison leaves play, return that creature to play under its owner's control, as though it were just summoned. During your upkeep, destroy Icy Prison. Any player may pay 3 to prevent this. So this is interesting in multiplayer. But basically, most of the time, you're having to pay an upkeep of 3 to keep it around. So this is a sort of a downplayed version of Oubliette from Arabian Nights, except shifted to blue. Illusionary Terrain, cumulative upkeep 2, and enchantment for 2 blue. All basic lands of one type become basic lands of a different type of your choice. So again, way to really mess with your opponent in some ways. But cumulative upkeep of 2 means this won't be staying around for probably more than 2 or 3 turns at most, typically. The drawing of maps is fruitless in the west, near the ice walls. The very earth is formless. Another journal entry. Breath of Dreams. Enchantment. Cumulative upkeep for blue. Green creatures. Each require an additional cumulative upkeep of 1. So this is a color hoser. Cumulative upkeep is annoying, and it's got it, so it won't be sticking around, but if your opponent has a bunch of green creatures, they're going to have to start making some choices in a hurry, and you're only having to pay the upkeep once. They're going to have to pay for each of their creatures. Get up, blast you. They're attacking. Why are you all so slow? Dreams of the Dead. I've seen this used quite effectively at times, interestingly. Another enchantment for 4, and you can pay 2. Take target white or black creature from your graveyard and put it directly into play as though it were just summoned. And again, you can do that at instant speed, so it's interesting. That creature now requires an additional cumulative upkeep of 2. If the creature leaves play, remove it from the game. So it's a way to get value from creatures that have died. And they, depending on the creatures, this could be a much more effective way of doing it than something like Night Soil, although it costs more. But yeah, definite sort of value engine card if you get it going. But it requires you to have that color mix in your deck again. We've got the Illusionary Wall. Flying for a strike. And again, remember, anytime you see walls, like the Glacial Wall or whatever it was before, walls can't attack. Some people didn't realize that, but everyone that was pretty self-evident to everyone I was playing with, to be honest.
So is the first number like just damage when people attack and this just blocks it, or what?
Yeah, basically. It's for blocking purposes. Flying in first strike. So this would kill most creatures before they'd be able to even deal damage back. But it's not going to hang around too long because it's got that cumulative upkeep again, so it'll buy you some time. But unless you play something like an animate wall on it to allow it to attack, which, you know, a 7/4 flying first strike attacker is also very powerful. Yeah, it would just require that extra card for setup basically at the time. Let them see what is not there and feel what does not touch them. When they no longer trust their senses, that is the time to strike. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I know a few people who used to like these. This used to be, again, here's your 4/4 flyer, and it only costs 4 instead of 5. But that dreaded cumulative upkeep. Early on, when my brother and I were just starting, and yeah, air elementals were harder to come by. The card pool in our area wasn't huge. This would fill in as a substitute sometimes, but yeah, that cumulative upkeep does put a hamper on it, even though the cost is 1 cheaper. This school was founded in secret and operates in secret, and exists for the teaching of secrets. Those who would alter reality must first escape
That's a really weird art.
It is a bit strange. Then we've got the Zern Enchanter. 1/1 for 2, and you can pay 2 and a black, so 3, and tap it. But you need black. Target player chooses and discards 1 card from his or her hand. Ignore this ability if that player has no cards, and you can only use it on your turn.
I looked at that card really quickly, and I thought it looked like Riker from Star Trek.
We are Kaldrons no more. Well, there's some similarity there, but
I'm talking about it because I looked quickly.
the blacker hair and yeah. So again, with the downpowering of popular cards, Hypnotic Spectre became Abyssal Spectre. So, increase the casting cost by 1. There's a huge difference between something that costs 3 and something that costs 4, especially in black where you have Dark Ritual. Another card which they kept around with the exact same title, reprint, because it was considered so central to how the game played at the time. Instead of a 2/2, they made it a 2/3. You got an extra toughness. Flying still stayed. When Abyssal Spectre damages a player, that player chooses and discards a card from his or her hand. That's also a step down, because Hypnotic Spectre was they had to discard a card at random. This, they get to choose. Still cutting into their resources in their hand, but makes a big difference whether they get to pick what they're discarding or whether it's random, or whether you get to pick in some cases, but that's another distinction that doesn't really apply. Open the gates and bid them enter, then duel the Necromancer. Howl from Beyond, another direct reprint. I think this might have been one of the, I forget how many editions past 4th edition they kept this around, but this was getting late into its run. Eventually they retired it. But 1 black and X for an instant. Target creature gets +X/+0 until end of turn. Handy combat trick if you've got first strike creatures or you just want to get in for extra damage with something. You know, I do. This is one of my favorite arts for it, though. I do like the wolf howling for the Howl of Beyond. From the mouths of my servants, my voice shall emerge to shake the souls of my foes. Lindul the Necromancer. And here's another fixed card. Demonic Tutor was, a black and a colorless. Search your library for any card, put it in your hand. Incredibly strong. They had just retired it out of Revised when they printed 4th edition, but they wanted something similar. So this is what they came up with. And as a tutor, it is a lot more fair because it's got more downside and drawback. However, people have broken it now because of new recently printed cards that can absolutely abuse not having a library anymore. Anyway, instant for 1 black. Name a card. Remove the top 6 cards of your library from the game and reveal the next card to all players. If it is the card named, put it into your hand. If not, remove that card from the game and continue revealing the top card of your library and removing it from the game until the named card appears. So yeah.
Working and lurking, says Broly.
You can
Welcome
use this for
and thank you.
1 black as an instant to eliminate your whole graveyard now, or your whole library now.
Thanks, Broly.
But basically, if you're trying to tutor up a specific card, especially if it's a restricted card that you only had 1 in your deck or had fewer copies of, it's a risky gambit if the card you were looking for happened to be in those first 6. And even if it's not, you're losing a big chunk of your deck to get your card. So, but still, it's certainly powerful these days. Here's a Dreadweight.
That's quite creepy.
It is.
Although the art is impressive.
3/4 for 5. At the end of combat, put a paralyzation counter on any creature blocking or blocked by Dreadweight, and tap that creature. As long as the creature has a paralyzation counter on it, it does not untap during the controller's untap phase. As a non-interrupt fast effect, the creature's controller may pay 4 to remove a counter. So you have to pay to allow their creature to start untapping again. This is a weaker version, basically, of Thicket Basilisk with a stoning effect. I think there was a Infernal Medusa or something like that, and it had a similar effect in Legends. Anyway. But it does deal 3 damage instead of 2. Now, here's one of the most famous cards from Ice Age, Necropotence. This card inspired the Black Summer. At first, it wasn't seen as that popular because it is a bit of a gamble, but it's a card drawing engine that can really take off when you got life gain in your deck. Drain Life was very common as a removal spell for black if you were worried about a black-on-black matchup, because it gained you life and it could target other black things, whereas things like Terror and Dark Banishing could not. And so you often had life gain in a black deck, and this could make good advantage of that. Skip your draw phase, so you don't draw cards regularly anymore once this hits the board. If you discard a card from your hand, remove it from the game, and you pay 1 life to set aside the top card of your library. At the beginning of your next discard phase, put that card into your hand, and effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used against life. So you're paying life to draw cards from that point on. But that means you can draw a lot of cards much more quickly than you would have been able to otherwise. And if you're using cards to gain you more life, you can use it to great effect. The reason this card did not take off right away was, guess what 4th edition still had around? Black Vice. And Black Vice makes this completely disadvantageous to try to run, because you want to be topping your hand up to 7 cards as much as possible. And Black Vice punishes you for having lots of cards in your hand by dealing you damage. So you're paying damage to draw your cards and taking extra damage from the Black Vice. It's really difficult to get that to work. But once they restricted or banned Black Vice, this card became much more feasible and just took over the metagame for a while. Dark Ritual. Speaking of, it is creepy. And they kept this card as part of the main core sets right from Alpha through Ice Age, through Mirage, through Tempest, Urza's Saga. This card stuck around for a long time, and people said it completely warped things towards black in some respects. Because you're trading resources, you have to play an extra card to play something faster. So you're turning 1 mana into 3. That's a 2-turn increase into how quick you can play something if you're getting all your land drops, for example. So you could use this to play Hypnotic Spectre on turn 1, or Singular Vampire, 2 turns earlier, or, if you've got multiple of them, it gets even sillier. But it is a gamble, because you are giving up extra resources to do it, which is a very black thing to do. But eventually they decided they wanted to get out of these sort of mana ritual things. Leshrac, my liege, grant me the power I am due. Yeah. Icequake. This is the fixed version of Sinkhole. So they put an extra colorless on it. Destroy target land, same effect. If that land is snow covered, Icequake deals 1 damage to the land's controller. So there's a little extra there if your opponent happened to have snow lands. Snow lands weren't popular to run because there was just too many extra downsides initially that could happen. People generally thought it safer to avoid them unless you were doing something specifically with them. But later, once these cards have become less common, I love to run Snowlands now as a fraction, not my entire mana base, but a fraction of my basic lands, just because it makes it safer for other things.
I'm trying to...
Speaking of Leshrac, here's Minions of Leshrac.
What the heck? Is this supposed to be some kind of dragon in snow or something? Or like... There's something else there. Look, there's like a face here.
Yeah, there's something there reacting to all of a sudden the ice splitting apart or something. Anyway.
Sorry.
Minions of Leshrac. 7 cost creature. Demon. 5/5. Protection from black. That was actually to keep you from animating it with something like an Animate Dead or Dance of the Dead from this set. Make it harder to do shenanigans like that. During your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. And again, there were very few things that could generate creature tokens back then. I think Night Soil was, or the Hive or something like that, which were expensive and had other conditions on them. Sacrifice a creature or Minion of Leshrac deals 5 damage to you. If Minion of Leshrac deals damage to you in this way, tap it. And you cannot sacrifice Minion of Leshrac to itself. But you can tap it to destroy target creature or land. So basically, they combined Demonic Hordes with Royal Assassin sort of effect, and gave it a harsher upkeep of sacrificing a creature rather than just paying 3 black. And added 1 to its casting cost. So yeah, but basically this is a more powerful but more downside version of the Demonic Hordes, basically. Then we've got Ashen Ghoul. This was sort of a different twist on the Nether Shadow type card. Yeah, 3/1 for 4. Ashen Ghoul can attack the turn it comes into play, so it's got haste. And you can pay a black to return it to play under your control. Use this ability only at the end of your upkeep, and only if Ashen Ghoul is in your graveyard with at least 3 creature cards above it.
I don't love it.
Yeah. And here's Dance of the Dead, which was, again, just like they took Control Magic and turned it into Binding Grasp, they did something very similar with Dance of the Dead. The casting cost stayed the same. Enchant Dead Creature. Again, this typing... Oh, they format... The enchantments that return creatures from the graveyard, they really struggled with how to format, how to word that to make it work with the rules. I never think they did figure it out perfectly, but... take target creature from any graveyard, yours or your opponent's, and put it directly into play under your control, tapped with +1/+1, so it makes the creature bigger even. The original Animate Dead gave it -1/-0. Treat that creature as though it were just summoned. The creature does not untap during its controller's untap phase. At the end of his or her upkeep, its controller may pay an additional 2, 1 and a black, to untap it. If Dance of the Dead is removed, bury the creature in its owner's graveyard. So it gives it basically an upkeep of 2 to let it untap. So there is downside to it, even though it does make it bigger. But definitely a popular option for reanimation decks, at least for a while. Then we've got Hecatomb. Enchantment for 3. When Hecatomb comes into play, sacrifice 4 creatures. And again, nowadays, that's a lot easier with creature tokens than it was back then. And you can pay 0, tap target swamp you control to have Hecatomb deal 1 damage to target creature or player. So basically, you can tap all your swamps to deal damage to things. That's a very strong effect. Basically, how I mentioned before, people built decks around Prodigal Sorcerer and Zern Spellcaster. Well, if all of a sudden all your swamps gain that effect, watch out. Then we've got a Stormglide Cabal, a Knight 2/2 for 3. Tap it and pay a life. Counter target white spell. Effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to counter this loss of life. Pay this ability as an interrupt. So again, if you had your Sleight of Mind handy, you could change this card to replace white with whatever they were playing, but still an interesting spell to this day, but obviously outclassed by things. There's Knight of Stormglad. There's the black version. So, like the Order of the Ebon Hand, protection from white, pumpable on its attack, or give it first strike. Keldrons should rule supreme, and to the rest, death. Garrison Leader. Oh, there's the Dark Ritual again. There's Dark Banishing. Bury target non-black creature. So Terror only costs 2, a black and 1, and it was bury target non-black non-artifact creature. So it couldn't hit artifact creatures. This can, but it costs 1 more. And bury basically just means destroy without the ability of regeneration. Regeneration was still a common ability. Bury gets around that. Will not the mountains quake and hills melt at the coming of the darkness? Share this vision with your enemies, Limdul. They shall wither. From Leshrac. Now,
Oh, that's cute.
it is cute, and it's hard to pronounce. Hyalopterus lemur.
I love it.
The artist who got that title to draw an art to go with, I think misunderstood lemur as a lemur, a little monkey-like creature.
Oh, it's supposed to be lemur?
Yeah, which is like a spirit monster type sort of zombie
I still
thing.
think it's cute.
So, yeah, they made it look like a cute little creature in some respects, which is not at all what those things typically were supposed to look like.
I don't care. I love it.
Anyways, it's a 4/3 for 5, and you can pay 0 to give it flying and -1 attack until end of turn. So you can make it a 3/3 flying.
Aww.
So they put a little wing on it. Anyway,
Love it.
the lemurs looked harmless until they descended on my troops. Within moments, only bones remained.
You know what? It's super cute.
And there's a pestilence rats. Now, plague rats have been around since alpha. Plague rats were 3 cost for a 1/1. Well, for a star that was equal to the number of plague rats in play. That card was designed before they put a limit of 4 copies of a card, so you could have a deck of all plague rats when the set first came out. By this time, you couldn't. So this was a way to try to get a similar effect going. Pestilence Rats has power equal to the total number of other rats in play, no matter who controls them. For example, as long as there are 2 other rats in play, Pestilence Rats has power and toughness 2/3. Yeah, other rats. So it doesn't even count itself. But at the time this was printed, there were only 2 other rats that had been printed to my knowledge. There was Bog Rats from the Dark, and there was Plague Rats from Alpha, and right through to 4th edition. So there really weren't enough rats to make this worthwhile, and they've since made better things
I
that
don't love rats.
have a similar
At
effect.
all.
Here's the Morphine that we've looked at before because it was in the other deck. This card always freaked me out a little. Gaze of Pain.
Yeah.
Just the art is disturbing.
Kind of reminds me of Pennywise a little.
Yeah, the cuts in the face through the eyes is just a little too much for me. Anyway, 2 cost for each creature you control that attacks and is not blocked. You may choose to have it deal no damage to defending player this turn. If you do, it instead deals damage equal to its power to any target creature.
I know Ryan's comment is not for this card, but if you missed it when he put it up and you saw it at this.
Yeah, I wouldn't call this one cute. Speaking of creaky cards, here's a Kevorkian Fetish. The traditional meaning for fetish, not the current meaning that's out there, but 3 cost for enchant creature. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep after it comes into play. Target creature gets +1/+1. So it gives your creature a small buff and lets you draw another card. Again, the extra card draws could be useful. Some Kevorkians find strength in the ears and eyes of their victims and wear such into battle. Then we've got some zombies. Now, there hadn't been a lot of zombies printed. Zombies were one of the original creatures from Alpha that did get a Lord character that buffed them, but it didn't buff them with power and toughness. It buffed them with Swamp Walk and the ability to regenerate for black. So, originally there had been Scathe Zombie, and then in the dark there was the Drowned, which was a blue zombie which could regenerate for black. But it was small. So, Ice Age did give a fair number of new zombies, but they all cost 3, which is the same as Scathe Zombie, which makes it really awkward to make a deck when all your zombies have the same casting cost and it's 3. You can't start playing 2 at a time until you get 6 mana. Yeah. So this one is a little bigger than a Scathe Zombie. It's a 2/3 for your 3, 2 black. And it's got snow-covered Swamp Walk just as a base. I've seen the faces of my dead friends among that grim band, and I can bear no more. Here's another one of the zombies. Again, 2/3 for 3. Creatures blocking or blocked by Lindul's cohort cannot regenerate this turn. Join me in the place of power, you risen dead. Join me where the waters weep and the trees have no hearts. There's another one too, which I think we'll get to in a bit here. Do I have it handy? Might as well do them at the same time. Oh, I got some doubles here, which I didn't thin out. Where is it? Yeah, here it is. Here's a Gangrenous Zombie. This one my brother used to use to good effect sometimes. 2/2 for your 3 zombie, and you can tap and sacrifice Gangrenous Zombies to have it deal 1 damage to each creature and player. If you control any snow-covered swamps, Gangrenous Zombies instead deals 2 damage to each creature and player. That can kill a lot of things, and again, the extra damage that you can't block to the player is nasty too. But again, it's a 3-cost zombie, and 2 2s and 3 3s. Yeah, they're a little bit bigger than your base 1-power merfolk and goblins that had lords, but the fact that they don't get buffed as easily, I mean, they can run Bad Moon and stuff, but now, these next 2 are a little bit interesting, because keep in mind, this is in the same set as Dark Ritual. So these mana boosting effects for black, this is before Red got them in anywhere near the same way. This is actually a slight upgrade, I think, on a card from Alpha called Sacrifice. 1 black, Burnt Offering. Sacrifice a creature to add that creature's casting cost in any combination of red or black to your mana pool. Sacrifice, I believe you could just add in black, so this gave you an option to get red as well from it. My foes serve me twice, in dying and in death. And then, oh shoot, not. Yeah, there it is. You got another one, and again, with Dark Ritual, another mana generating instant or interrupt for 1. Add black to your mana pool for each creature card in your graveyard. So it works well with Burnt Offering, which is putting more creatures in your graveyard too. Not wind, but the breath of the dead. These cards... oh, hey Kevin, thanks for stopping in. These cards were pervasive back then as just a way to get more mana and play things quicker. And again, if you had X spells like the Soul Burn, which was printed in this set, but I couldn't find a copy, or Drain Life type effects that dealt damage for each black spent in addition to the casting cost, and you gain life equal to that amount, that was a good use for it too. It was sort of giving black its own X spell without X. They did actually print it once with an X on the casting cost, but that's another matter. Mind Ravel. Target player chooses and discards a card from his or her hand. Ignore this if they don't have cards in their hand, and then draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So this is assuming they have any cards in their hand. This is basically a 2-for-1, but you don't get your card till a little later, and they get to choose what they're discarding. So, is it really worth it? I don't know. I hemmed and hawed over it for a while, and I tried it for a while.
Hey, Kevin.
And in the end, didn't use it much. Foul Familiar. Here's... it's an interesting one. So, you get 3 for a 3/1. Cannot be declared as a blocking creature. And you can pay a black and a life to return Foul Familiar to its owner's hand. So it can be hard to get rid of, because you can keep bringing it back out that way.
It's getting smoky out there again.
Right. Fear is a reprint from Alpha as well, or 4th edition, because that card stuck around for a while too. Target creature cannot be blocked except by artifact creatures or blacked creatures. Eventually they turned this card, this creature enchantment, into a keyword that just some creatures had fear. With the same effect. Mole Worms. 1/1 for 3. You may choose not to untap Mole Worms during your untap phase. And you can tap it to tap a land as long as Mole Worms remains tapped. That land doesn't untap during its controller's untap phase. So, again, it's a lockdown card. Kind of like Phyrexian Gremlins were for artifacts. Mole Worms is for lands.
gotta show that to Broly. And Broly, we've got a worm for you.
Horror Shade. So here's
It makes me think of that dude from the Red Skull guy when he was on the Bull.
Yeah, a little bit.
Whatever, but different color.
Now this is basically Frozen Shade from Alpha and on, except that you pay 1 more and it's got a permanent 1/1 buff over, because Frozen Shade was a 0/1 with the same ability, paying a black to give +1/+1, but it costs 3 instead of 4. The creature we fought in the Western Wastes was doubly dangerous. Mortally wounded, it rebounded and attacked again. And then there's again, I missed some of the duplicates, unfortunately. Mind Warp is a fixed version of Mind Twist. Mind Twist was brutal, and it stuck around to 4th edition for some
Skeletor.
reason. But yeah,
Broly thinks he looks like Green Skeletor.
Yeah. So Mind Twist was 1 black and X. Target player discards X
weird.
cards at random.
Oh,
this is 1 black and 3 and X. So you got to pay an extra 3. It does nothing until you have 5 mana, basically. Look at target player's hand and choose X cards. So instead of discarding at random, you get to pick what they discard, which is nice. But when you have 3 less cards being discarded, it's just not as good. That player then discards those cards. If the player does not have enough cards, his entire hand is discarded. Stench of Evil.
Oh, wow. That is a weird looking card.
It is. Sorcery for 4. Destroy all planes. Stench of Evil deals 1 damage to each player for each planes he or she controls that is destroyed this way. Each player may pay 2 for each one of that damage they wish to prevent. So, if your opponent's playing white, and if they're mostly tapped out, This not only will kill all their lands, or most of them, it also deals them some damage. On top of that, it's a nasty card, but again, it's one of those specific sort of color hate cards which they've tended to get rid of. Soul Kiss. So, enchant creature for 3. When it comes into play, choose a creature. You can pay a black and 1 life to give the creature an enchant +2/+2 until end of turn. So sort of that shade effect, except a little more. You cannot spend more than 3 this way each turn. And effects that prevent life loss don't affect that. So, yeah, it's a way to pump a creature. But it's a lot of setup and a lot of paying to get it to work. And again, another double I missed. Cloak of Confusion. 2 for enchant creature. If target creature you control attacks and is not blocked, you may choose to have it deal no damage to defending player this turn. If you do, that player discards a card at random from his or her hand. Ignore this ability if the player has no cards in hand. So again, neat effects. There's a lot of enchant creatures and stuff in this game, and creatures were generally smaller and slower, so it was neat to try to experiment with this stuff, but a lot of these didn't see a whole lot of play. It's just too risky to risk putting a card on a creature and then your opponent removes the creature and you've lost a 2-1, basically. And again, another Morphiend. Brine Shaman. This one was kind of interesting. A 1/1 for 2. You can tap it and sacrifice a creature to give target creature +2/+2 until end of turn. Or you can pay 2 blue and 1 and sacrifice a creature to counter target summon spell. And this one can sacrifice itself, so there's that too. The Shamans of Merit Lage do her bidding in secret, but they do it gladly. And again, not as easy to find creatures to sacrifice at this time unless you're casting them yourself. And then we've got the Kaldroran Dead. This is sort of the version of Drudge Skeletons. It costs 1 less to play, but when it comes into play, you have to sacrifice a creature. And it's a 3/1 instead of a 1/1 that regenerates for 1 black. That could be pretty nasty. In some ways, this creature got sort of quadrupled up and turned into the Lord of Treasurehorn in Alliances. But that's another whole story that came later. This creature, when it was on the table, with the ability to regenerate for 1 black and 3 power, could be very frustrating to deal with. But that downside is substantial. They shall kill those whom once they loved. Lovely thought from Duel there.
That line also, it just makes me think again of that character there.
Now, Red eventually got the mana rituals, but at this point it didn't have them yet. This was the sort of closest thing it did. It could combine with Green, which Green had mana creatures. But this was about as close as Red got for a long time.
But 2 at completion may not make state. I don't know what that's about, Kevin. But I guess you're talking to second.
Exams or
something. I don't know. He's talking to Broly about something. But
competition. Anyway. Orcish Lumberjack. 1 red for a 1/1, and you can tap it and sacrifice a forest to add 3 mana in any combination of red and or green to your mana pool. Play this ability as an interrupt. So some people used to use this in combination with Channel, which for some reason was still hanging around, although it was usually banned in competitive play. If they wanted to do a big Channel Fireball thing early. Or to trick out other creatures that could get a big body on the board quickly. The problem with it is you're sacrificing your lands. And that's usually not a good long-term strategy, especially if you're planning on doing it.
That's how you say that, right?
A whole bunch. Yeah. Okay.
Fun.
Well, second is still respectable, and I hope you get a chance to go on. But congratulations as far as it goes. It still sounds pretty good. How did I ever let myself get talked into this project? Toothlicker, the Orcish Captain.
That's a fun one.
It is a fun one.
Orcish Lumberjack.
Yeah. Oh, this card used to see some play at times, but it is a very sort of high risk, high reward type card. Then we've got Pyroblast. This one's more popular than the Hydroblast, just because blue often needs stopping, and a 1-mana counterspell for it, when blue is so prevalent, is very worthwhile. Counter target spell if it is blue, or destroy target permanent if it is blue.
Well, that's a different.
Just the thing for those pesky water mages.
That's a different kind of style of dragon.
It is.
Is that like, that's more like the Chinese lore dragon, right?
It is a little bit, for sure. Then we've got Yokel Hopes, or Jackal Hops. Yokel Hopes, I think, is supposed to be the right pronunciation, but I could be wrong.
That looks cool. I like that
So
one.
yeah, 6 mana, bury all artifacts, creatures, and lands. So this is a big board reset. It leaves enchantments, and it leaves planeswalkers now that those exist, but I was shocked when I first saw the aftermath of the Avamaya Valley disaster. The raging water had swept away trees, bridges, and even houses. My healers had much work to do. And good old Pyroclasm. This is
That
the
was
set
cool.
that introduced it. It got reprinted many times. It's a nice, cheap way to control, large swarms of creatures, because they're usually large swarms or small creatures. Pyroclasm deals 2 damage to each creature. Just blanket. You can wipe out a lot of stuff with this. Usually you can find a way to get good value, especially if the creatures you're running have 3 toughness or more. Leaves more room for the big ones to fight in, There you go. That's pretty much the point of this card. Now this card, I used to run this card as a joke sometimes.
Wow.
Just for fun. We got Barbarian Guides.
I looked up Ice Age, and apparently the Black Curum is from Surging Sparks is in the list.
Interesting.
They mix up a few things.
So it's only a 2/1 for 3, but you can pay 3 and tap it. Target creature you control gains a snow-covered land walk ability of your choice until end of turn. At end of turn, return that creature to its owner's hand. So, snow-covered land walk of my choice. And since you could use Arkham's Withervane to give any land the snow-covered effect, that means any land can be snow-covered. So, I used to love to use this to give creatures snow-covered Island of Walk, Walk, Walk. Just because I loved that. Snow-covered Island of Walk, 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 please. Thank you. Then you've got the Orcish Squatters. 5 mana for a 2/3. If Orcish Squatters attacks and is not blocked, you may gain control of target of a land controlled by defending player. If you do, Orcish Squatters deals no damage in combat this turn. Lose control of that land if Orcish Squatters leaves play, or if you lose control of Orcish Squatters. So basically, they just sit on the land and say, yep, we'll take this now. This is mine. And then you get the land back once you kill the squatters eventually. But
Fun fact, it's illegal to squat in Alberta.
Yeah, I know. And the fact that they're physically squatting in the picture, which can be something where you're doing something else, can be amusing to certain minds.
Anyways, talking about the squatting, I mean, is like when people squat on people's land. And
Yeah. And again, the art by Richard Kane Ferguson, popular guy. But they're certainly annoying if you're already playing land destruction or something. Speaking of land destruction, here's Avalanche. 4 and X in red. Destroy X snow-covered lands. The pass was completely blocked by the avalanche. We're forced to turn back. Nevertheless, we've gone farther and seen more than any before us. Now, again, if you're manipulating with Arkham's Withervane or something, this could be annoying. But, if you're playing a land destruction deck, it shouldn't need that much setup, generally speaking. And here's the ubiquitous Stone Rain. Stone Rain is another card which was around since Alpha, and they kept putting in pretty much every sort of base set, core set for a long, long time, just because it's a staple card of the game as it was originally conceived, just like Dark Ritual. And now, both it and Dark Ritual are seen as something you do not want to have in your game, period, and they haven't been printed for ages. But I've actually heard of like Alpha 40 lists where the rules group, whatever is deciding, has decided to restrict or ban cards like this, even though if you could ask her to,
No,
yeah, we
nope.
can.
Barry's just doing a live video right now.
Okay, so anyway, yeah. May the force that took Argoth beneath the waves never come among us again. Akram Dags and Sovadai Machinist. But yeah, Stone Rain, standard tactic was to manage resources, control resources by limiting your opponent's land. The art on this one is particularly fun.
Barry, are you going to bed at noon or 1 tomorrow?
Sometime between the two, probably.
Sometime between noon and 1.
Anyway, imposing visage. Enchant creature for 1. Target creature cannot be blocked by only one creature. So basically, this was Menace, I believe. They made it later on. I can't believe they expect me to fight with this rabble. A goblin in a big mask sends him running for cover.
The moon looks orange through the smoke.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
Then we've got Bone Shaman. It's a 3/3 for 4. That's basically the same cost as the old Hill Giant. But this giant has got some shaman-y abilities, so you can pay a black, and any creature damaged by Bone Shaman this turn cannot regenerate until end of turn. Take that. Rattle me bones as I cross the floor, and the bones in your grave will rattle no more. But basically, it's a mostly standard giant. Grizzled Wolverine. Again, this is just one of those creatures that, coming from Canada and hearing about such creatures, not that I had seen one in my youth, was a little bit inspiring. So it's a 2/2 for 3, and you can pay a red to give it +2 attack until end of turn. Use this ability only when a creature is assigned to block Grizzled Wolverine, and only once each turn. I used to use this sometimes early on. That could be a deterrent for a lot of blockers. Before you...
Sure, I've ever seen a Wolverine in the wild. I mean, it's possible. We just didn't know what it was as it crossed the road or something.
Yeah, that sort of thing. I may have seen one now too, but, you know, there's a lot of wildlife where I work. Before you release a Wolverine from the trap, make sure it's really dead.
They're pretty dangerous animals.
They are. Then here's a Carpusian Giant. 7 cost for a 3/3. This is a pretty sad giant.
They're kind of cute, though.
They can be. This giant is less cute, but...
I'm talking about the Wolverine.
The Wolverine, yes. Yeah. You can pay 0 and tap target snow-covered land you control to give Carpusian Giant +1/+1 until end of turn. So you can pump it for free, well, for tapping your snowlands, basically. So it could be a right pain if you got a lot of snowlands, but that's still putting a condition on a base creature that's pretty meager otherwise. They aren't the brightest or the quickest of giants. For that matter, the same holds true if you compare them to rocks.
Ooh, there's probably a reason why I've never seen a Wolverine growing up.
Yeah.
Although, no, I guess that's, the purple's just their year-round range. So they could have...
Orcish Conscripts. Well, they probably wouldn't have gone that far anyway. Orcish Conscripts is a 2/2 for 1 mana. Is pretty efficient back in the day, but of course it's got to have a downside. Cannot be declared as attacking unless at least 2 other creatures are also declared as attacking. Cannot be assigned to block unless at least 2 other creatures are also assigned to block. So, it's a support creature, basically. I tried them. They're not great.
You tried what?
The Orcish Conscripts.
Oh.
and they don't look great either. Goblin Mutant, on the other hand, could be useful. It's kind of like a almost as big as an Org, but a little bit less so. You get a 5/3 for 4 trample. Org is a 6/6 for 5. Cannot attack if defending player controls an untapped creature with power greater than 2. Cannot be assigned to block any creature with power greater than 2. If only it had 3 brains, too. So yeah, basically the same same abilities as Org, just a little bit smaller body. But if you were making a Goblin deck, at the time, this was the biggest, nastiest Goblin that you could get. So you'd start off with your little 1/1 for 1s or 1/1 for 2 goblins. You'd play a Goblin Lord that give them all +1/+1 in Mountain Walk. And then you'd follow up with this guy, which would be a fair size at that point. Yeah.
I just did a quick search to see if Wolverines were in Ontario. Yeah, they used to be, but they're mostly now mostly stay in the boreal forest.
And Tor Giant here is basically Hill Giant. They just give it a new name, so you could run 8 of them now if you wanted to.
It's funny, you see a card, like just a magic card, and then you go doing some Googling on
Makes
the animal.
Makes you think sometimes. What do you do then? Run? Run very fast. Don't stop until you see the camp. Or a bigger giant. Let's like another cap.
So, this is, hold on a second. The only little bit of politics talk that I'm going to say is it reminds me of when the one politician in the committee was like saying, "What is it that you do?" when they were questioning somebody's they're investigating somebody.
Right.
It was funny.
Next we got Word of Blasting. A red and a colorless for an instant. Bury target wall. Word of Blasting deals an amount of damage equal to that wall's casting cost to the wall's controller. So this would make it a little risky to run walls to try to slow down your opponent while you're setting things up. Walls? What walls?
That's fun. I like it.
Yeah, it's fun in its way for sure. Meteor Shower and Incinerate were 2 more direct damage spells that were in this set that I could find copies of. Speaking of dealing damage to a player. Meteor Shower was the first double X spell.
I like this one.
Yeah, Melting. This is not a spell that I ever saw anybody actually use.
I just like the picture.
It's an enchantment for 4. All snow-covered lands become non-snow-covered lands of the same type. Who needs the sun when you've got me around? And Jaya Ballard became a character in a lot of the stories later on. They've made cards of her. Yeah.
I just like the art.
The art is interesting. It's an effect that's just not that useful most of the time.
Can I see it? It's just, I like waterfalls and streams and stuff like that. So.
Lava Burst was the X damage spell for Ice Age. This replaced Fireball and Disintegrate from Alpha. So this is 1 red and X, deals X damage to target creature or player, and effects that prevent or redirect damage cannot be used to protect that creature. So...
They could have used this in Magic the Gathering.
What?
This card, the Lava Burst, because it kind of made me think of the...
This is Magic the Gathering.
No, sorry, I meant Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings set.
Oh.
Sorry, I don't know why I said Magic the Anyways.
Yeah, there are some similarities to the design. Overkill? This isn't a game of kick the oaf. There's J.I.
I'm
again.
tired. I'm getting my words mixed up.
Yeah, that's alright. Here's an Orcish Farmer.
Again?
He's got some personality.
Didn't you show us one already?
I showed it to you earlier. Maybe it was in the deck that I grabbed.
But yeah,
anyway,
I think so.
Target land becomes a swamp. Yeah. Yeah, that must have been it. Anyway, it's a fun card. Here's Conquer. Another red land manipulating card. 5 cost enchant land. Gain control of target land, so you get to steal one of your opponent's lands. That's always fun.
She destroyed some people.
Why do we trade with those despicable elves? You don't live in forests, you burn them. Right. There's a...
That's a Gimli.
Nice tolerant attitude.
That's a Gimli card.
Go. Conquer that land.
I like the snowman.
Goblin Snowman. Yeah, these goblins are having fun. It's a 1/1 for 4, which is a little expensive. When blocking, Goblin Snowman neither deals nor receives damage in combat. So it's a very
What are you
defensive
looking
goblin. And you can tap it.
Well, you don't need it. It's bedtime.
Yeah, I'm looking for it so I can charge it
There were some of them above the computer in the cubby holes.
earlier.
Yeah, well, yesterday was when I saw them there. Tap it to Goblin Snowman deals 1 damage to target creature it blocks. Strength in numbers. Right. Ib Half-Heart Goblin Tactician.
Oh.
They made a card of him eventually, I think in Time Spiral or something.
Tiger.
Saber-Tooth Tiger.
I like it.
2/1 first strike for 3.
But why is it like a tiger but just saber-tooth? Because aren't saber-tooths like a lighter color and not like a tiger striped?
It's just the way they portrayed it. It's a sort of a mythical world anyway.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
Sorry, it just looked weird.
Daughter, it is now your turn to hunt the tiger and make a blanket of its fur.
Ooh, poor tiger. Poor tiger.
Mountain Goat.
I like it.
1 red for a 1/1 mountain walk. Folklore has it that to capture a mountain goat is a sign of divine blessing. I just know it's a sign that dinner is on the way. Then we've got a Capuchin Yeti. Now this one is a little bit interesting because they took the art of this person on the right here and put that on one of the booster pack wrappers, but not the art of the Yeti itself.
Weird.
So it's a 3/3 for 5,
Oh, weird.
and you can tap it. Capuchin Yeti deals an amount of damage equal to its power to target creature. That creature deals an amount of damage equal to its power to Capuchin Yeti. That's sort of a fighting mechanic that they developed more later. This is not the first Yeti they ever printed. There was a Yeti in Legends which had protection from white and mountain walk and was a 3/3 for 4. So that's the one I preferred. What's that smell?
Smoke.
It's these two smelling the Yeti. I'm
I'm
wondering where it is.
I know you weren't talking about smoke. I was just
Mm-hmm.
throwing it there.
Here's Flare, and again another direct damage spell from Ice Age. Incinerate, by the way, was 1 red and 1 for 3 damage to target creature and player, and the creature couldn't regenerate. So that was sort of the fixed version of Lightning Bolts to try to make it cost it a little bit less efficiently to make it a little bit more of a fair card. But this is 1 damage to a creature and player for 3, and you get to draw the extra card. People didn't appreciate in my play group how powerful drawing an extra card was, but the fact that it was delayed didn't help matters either. This card never really caught on among us.
I like the art though. It's kind of weird, but it's almost gives you like the watercolor effect too.
I strive for elegance and speed in my work. Yeah. Shatter. The poor Tin Man.
No,
Anyway.
not the Tin Man.
1 and a red, destroy target artifact. And again, there was a fair bit of those around. Not as useful as something like Disenchant, which could hit artifacts or enchantments, but occasionally you saw this played. And again, it was a standard card around since Alpha, so they just put it in as something that would be a standard tool that should be around, that they felt, I guess. Let the past be the past. Do not call up that which you cannot put down. Destroy that which destroyed us so long ago. Another Soldala Heretic quote. They really don't like artifacts. Errantry. Enchant creature for 2. Target creature gets +3 attack. If that creature attacks, no other creatures can attack this turn. There is no shame in solitude. The lone knight may succeed where 100 found her.
Okay, that's weird. If you look at that really, really quick and then like take a quick glance, it kind of looks like Nicolas Cage.
I'll take your word for it.
From the side, just kind of.
There's the Orcish Cannoneer, which we saw before. It's a thankless job, and you'll probably die in an explosion, but the pay is pretty good.
It so looks like him.
Yeah, tapping to do 2 damage to target creature or player is a strong effect, but 3 damage to you, that is a big downside to get that effect. It could be useful sometimes, though. And there's the Bolivian Barbarians and Goblin Ski Patrol. I said Goblin Sappers was another 1/1 for 2 that had
That's a
an
fun one.
interesting little effect. I like the flavor text. I as they go skidding down the, and you see the one wiping out in the background.
I love it. I love the art.
You can pay 2 to give it flying and +2 attack until end of turn, but bury it. So at the end of turn, it's going to die and can't regenerate. Use its ability only once and only if you control any snow-covered mountains. So if you don't have a snow-covered mountain, it can't get flying.
I like that art. It's fun.
It is fun. It's sort of, to me, this is sort of a fixed version of the Goblin Rock Sled, which had a few issues with it.
That card sounds like an 80s movie.
Yeah, kinda. Next, we got Giant Growth again, just a standard reprint. Of all the boons that were 1 for 3 of something from Alpha, this is the one that was probably the best balance and stuck around in this form for pretty much the longest. +3/+3 until end of turn for 1 green. It's a very solid combat trick. You can use to get extra damage in or keep a creature alive. Here in Finehorn, the goddess Frelis is generous to her children. Then we got Tinderwall. This is a enhanced version of Wall of Wood, which was always a bit of a joke card in my experience, although it could be useful to gum things up early. I guess I've heard people say that, you could use this even nowadays to gum up something like a Ragavan, but it's a wall. It's a 0/3 for 1 green, but the main effect comes in its abilities, because you can sacrifice it to add 2 red to your mana pool. So you could drop this on turn 1, and then on your next turn you play your second land, you get 2 red from this, and you could play an Earnhand Djinn or some other big 4 drop, and it would speed you up quite a bit. Or you could pay a red and sacrifice this to have it deal 2 damage to something it blocks in a pinch, if that was something you needed to do as well. Tinderwall was one of my favorites. I used to play a red-green deck, and I much prefer to run a Tinderwall for a mana burst than something like the Orcish Lumberjack, because I don't like sacrificing my lands, but this, sacrificing a little wall that I threw out in the early game, I had much less problem with. Interestingly, they decided to make Finehorn Elves, which was just a name swap, basically, from Lunwar Elves. So now, you could run 8 mana elves in your deck that were 1 green for a 1/1 that could tap for a green. You could run your 4 Lunwar Elves and your 4 Finehorn Elves. And that's the type of card that you would like to have more than 4 of if you want to rely on getting one in your opening hand. So that made a big difference. At this time, elves didn't have like lords or things really, but yeah, that made a big difference into the reliability of elves in your deck, and they're still one of my favorites. Living side by side with elves for so long leaves me with no doubt that we serve the same goddess. That's one of the elder druids of the Juniper Order. Oh, I got 2 of those there.
Oh, that art is really nice.
It is. And this is an interesting card. Feralise Supplicant. 2 mana for a 1/1, and you can tap it. Sacrifice a red or white creature.
Is that a flying cat?
Yeah, it looks like. Some kittens with wings on one side.
I love it.
Yeah. I guess they're baby griffins or something.
They're cute. I like them.
I don't know. Or maybe not griffin.
I can't imagine
anyway.
my cats flying growing up. That would have been weird.
Anyway, you can tap it and sacrifice a red or white creature to have it deal an amount of damage equal to half the creature's power, rounded down to target creature or player. So fairly diverse there. This would go nicely with something like Ball Lightning from the Dark. So you'd play that, swing for your 6, and then if it survived, tap it and sacrifice it with this to get an extra 3 damage out of it before it was going to die anyway. Yeah. Or creatures with upkeeps that you couldn't pay for much longer anyway. It's not often that you get a green card that can deal direct damage to things, so it is an interesting option in that way. Anyway, we have joined the Druids of the Juniper Order. Our faith is one. Someone from the Elvish Council. Next, here's Thermokarst. So this was adapted Ice Storm. An extra green in the casting cost. Destroy target land. If that land is a snow-covered land, gain a life. Finally, we understand the lesson of our home. Loss begets renewal. So yeah, again, just like the base set that had Stone Rain, Ice Storm, and Sinkhole, the same three colors now. You've got Thermokarst, Stone Rain, and Icequake. So, again, land destruction, a very important theme in the early days of this game. Stunted growth. Pay 5 for a sorcery. Target player chooses 3 cards from his or her hand and puts them on top of his or her library in any order. If that player does not have enough cards in hand, then their entire hand is put on top of the library. So this will slow them down in a big way. They got to redraw the cards that they otherwise had.
So was that card 50 cents or was it sleeve? Just
it's probably a reused sleeve. At one time, maybe it was. I don't know. Yavimaya Nats. Now, this is very similar to Will o' the Wisp, which was a black card for 1 that was a 0/1 flying regenerate. This is shifted to green, and this is green's basically only flying defense other than spiders and stuff that can block flyers. Yeah, it costs a little more to get your green flyer, 3 cost. It is our 3rd day of travel on the Yavimaya River, and still these creatures plague us. Davin Lanson, our naturalist, has facetiously labeled them gnats, and the name has stuck. Lure, a very tactical enchantment that was very popular back with the Basilisk, and or even just in general to use on its own. Sometimes on a regenerating creature, for example, to keep it around longer. Yeah, this is just, again, straight up reprint from the base set, or the Alpha through 4th edition. All creatures able to block target creature must do so. Lure does not prevent a creature from blocking more than one creature if a blocker has that ability. At this time, not very many did. If a blocker is forced to block more creatures, then it is allowed to. Defender chooses which of those creatures to block, i.e. if you have lures on multiple creatures. Or,
that's a fun one.
but it must block as many creatures as is allowed.
My brother got a lure in his head once.
Yeah, those are not fun.
That's pretty.
It is. Folk of the Pines. It always reminded me a little bit of the White Witch from the Narnia series for some reason. Not entirely sure why. But Dryad. It's 2/5 for 5, and you can pay 2 to pump its attack. Our friends of the forest take many forms, yet all serve the will of Fairlies. Shambling Strider. My brother had one of these in his first Ice Age deck, and it was one of our stronger creatures we had at the time. 6 cost for a 5/5, and you can pay red and green to give it +1 attack but -1 defense until end of turn. So if it gets through, it can threaten a little more. Fairlies forbid that any stranger should wander into the Strider's territory. Next, we've got the Woolly Spider. So Giant Spider from the base set cost 4, but only 1 green, for a 2/4 that can block creatures with flying. This is a 2/3 for 3, a little bit more efficient in that sense, but it does have a higher green requirement. And if it does block a creature with flying, it gets +2 defense. So that would make it a 2/5. So all those 4/4 flyers that we were talking about earlier, this can handle them a little bit easier. We need not fear the forces of the air. I've yet to see a spider without an appetite.
Okay, I don't like spiders, but this art is really cool.
It is cool. We've got a Maddening Wind. This is sort of like Wanderlust, except it's got cumulative upkeep of a green. Same casting costs, a green and 2. During target creature's controller's upkeep, Maddening Wind deals 2 damage to that player. So again, penalizing them for having the creature around. Earthlore, enchant land for a green. When Earthlore comes into play, choose target land you control. Pay 0, tap land Earthlore enchants to give target blocking creature +1/+2 until end of turn. Even the ground is our friend. So this is sort of a way of turning a land into a Pendlehaven, except you can only use it on defense. This reminds me, too, I wasn't able to find another card that they reprinted directly was Wild Growth. And the art on the Ice Age Wild Growth is actually pretty sweet. I mean, like, it looks fairly realistic. It's like a skull caught in some... from a rodent of some sort, caught in the vines that are growing. There's a brown oaf. 1/1 for 1, and you can pay 2 and tap it to counter target artifact ability requiring an activation cost. Play this ability as an interrupt. This can be a surprisingly useful ability at times, but usually this wasn't useful enough, generally speaking, to run. People could play around it too. Oafs love trinkets and love to take them apart. I only wish they wouldn't do so with the magical ones. Next we got Whiteout. Get a snowstorm coming in. A green and 1. For an instant, all creatures with flying lose flying until end of turn. If Whiteout is in your graveyard, you may sacrifice a snow-covered land to return it to your hand.
The art's pretty cool.
It is kind of neat.
Try and take a picture of it, though. It does not pick up, like, just video, you can see it better.
Yeah.
But when I was trying to take a picture earlier, you couldn't see it very well at all.
Yeah. And we've got an essence filter. Destroy all enchantments or destroy all non-white enchantments. So again, if you're playing white,
Is that a face coming through the fire?
Extra value there. I'm not sure. I think it's some sort of thing he's holding up to cause this thing to happen.
Oh, okay.
Feralise has cleansed our bodies and minds of the plagues of Keljor, and all she asks in return is that we keep pure our newly given home in Finehorn. Rhyme Druid, we looked at this before. Nature's Lore. Search your library for any forest and put it directly into play. This does not count towards your 1 land per turn limit. Reshuffle your library afterwards. Finehorn is our home. I think this was, something like this was reprinted in Portal 3 Kingdoms at one point. Was that 3 visits, or was that... I'm getting it mixed up. Anyways, it's a neat card. If you're looking for, a green ramp to get more land into play, this is definitely a way to do it. Tarpan. I think this got eroded to a horse, but...
I like it.
1/1 for 1. If Tarpan is put into the graveyard from play, gain a life. A good Tarpan will serve you, faithful and true. A bad one will kick you in the head.
Oh my goodness. Don't want a bad one.
Nope. And we've got Touch of Vitae. 3 for an instant. Target creature may untap 1 additional time this turn. That creature may attack or use abilities that require tap as part of the activation cost. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So all of a sudden, one of your creatures can attack a second time or use an ability, and you get to draw a card to replace it. Didn't come up much, but something interesting. Next, we got a Finehorn Brownie. 1/1 for 3. Pay 3 and tap it to untap target creature. Could be useful. I've been insulted by drunks in 100 inns, but never as skillfully or annoyingly as by those blasted brownies.
Brownies?
Yeah. Again, it's sort of like a leprechaun type thing,
I know,
I think.
but when I hear brownies, I think of Willow.
Next, we've got Balduvian Bears. So this is basically Grizzly Bear, just rethemed for this area, I suppose. And it's a 2/2 for 2. They're a hardy bunch, but I'd still bet that they just slept through the worst of the cold times, referring to how grizzly bears tend to, or that type of bear anyway, tends to hibernate in the winter.
Ooh, scary looking bear.
Yeah.
Ooh, polar bears.
And then we've got the pale bears. This one's a rare, actually. 2/2 for 3. And it's one of the first. It was pretty rare to find creatures with island walk that weren't blue themselves. So here's a pale bears with that. Daughter, on the day you have killed your pale bears, then I will give you your true name. Barbarian chieftain. This was actually one of a pair of cards that were both rare. The other one was a pygmy allosaurus, one of the first dinosaurs they ever printed. And it was a 2/2 for 3, same casting cost, but it had swamp walk. So green got those land walk abilities for its enemy colors, which was interesting. Brown oaf. I missed the double. There's the scaled worm. I think Ryan was mentioning this earlier. So they took the 6/4 craw worm for 6, increased its cost to 8, which makes it almost unplayable in itself unless you're doing some major ramping, and made it a little stronger, so it's a 7/6. It was pretty fearsome when you got it out, but that was hard to do. Flourishing during the Ice Age, these worms were the bane of all Keldorans. Their greater size and ferocity made them the subject of countless nightmares. They embodied the worst of the Ice Age. Now, if you were going to try and play overcosted creatures like this was the period in Magic's history to do it, because they had tried to reduce the power level a little bit. So games did tend to last a little bit longer. But it still wasn't good. Now here's the dire wolves. This is an impressive piece of art, really. You get the northern lights in the background there behind the trees. Cool. The wolves feasting on what was left of a mammoth by the look of it. A little pack.
I'm coming to get you.
2/2 for 3. Gains banding if you control any planes. So again, it encourages you to play green-white, allied colors. It's amazing how scared a city kid can get at a dog. Now, of course, I'd cross Tertiaire alone and keep no watch if I had a pack of greys hanging on my flanks as I went.
One of my favorite cards is the direwolf, says Ryan.
Yeah, I really like it. And to be honest, this is one of the cards that my brother got in his first starter deck, and that that helped us learn how to play. And we made a horrible mistake early on because we could not figure out this line for anything when we first picked up the deck and just started playing. Gains banding if you control any planes. We figured that, yeah, you had to control planes, but what's gains banding? We didn't know what that did, so we just treated it as give it +1/+1 if you control planes. Yeah, completely false, but hey, we were learning. We also didn't understand Yoko Hopes, so it's like, well, it says to destroy all artifact creatures and lands, but it doesn't make sense that you play something to kill your own stuff. It must just mean the opponent's. Yeah, duh. Anyway, we figured that stuff out shortly, but hadn't quite yet at that point. Juniper Order Druid. Now this is a Lee Druid, just rebranded. 1/1 for 3, same casting cost. Tap it to untap target land. Play this ability as an interrupt. The filthy towns of Keldor are no place for anyone to live. Findhorn is our home now. There's Foxfire. Untap target attacking creature. That creature neither receives nor damage in combat this turn. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. Again, a limited fog that just targets one creature, and you could abuse that by blocking and killing it. I think we've seen this before. Regeneration, another reprint from 4th edition. and earlier. When it comes into play, put it on a creature, and you can pay a green to regenerate that creature. Yeah, regeneration. Again, another ability that's fallen out of favor now, but very common in the early days of Magic the Gathering. Faith in Frailties has given me the gift, not the curse, of unprecedented longevity. And we've got Wall of Pine Needles. 3/3 for 4, and you can pay a green to regenerate it.
Is that a skeleton?
Yep.
That's creepy.
Yep, that creature couldn't get through the Wall of Pine Needles.
It's getting a little blurry.
The power of the forest takes 100 forms. Some are more surprising than others.
I don't know if for other people it's blurry too.
There's the woolly mammoths and a chub toad. This creature was just fun as a kid. Not good, but fun. 1/1 for 3 isn't great, but chub toad gets +2/+2 until end of turn when blocking or blocked. So if you got something that wants to fight it, all of a sudden it becomes a 3/3 instead of a 1/1.
I would not try and catch that toad.
No. Chub toad, at the door. Run away quick or you'll run no more. Traditional children's rhyme. And then Pick Night. This card was basically a running joke, because it was a 1/1 with no abilities for 3. And almost any other creature was better than that. The upside is that you get to draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep, so it replaces itself as a card in your hand, but again, that wasn't respected very much, especially with the delay at the time, and nobody much liked Pick Nights. If you had any other creature, you'd probably play something else instead, at least as we thought at the time. Never cross a Pick Night if you value your scalp. So there's green. Like I said, they also brought back legendary creatures. I didn't have any to show in what I found there, but here's one for multicolors. A 1/1 Mary Cree Barrett, white, blue, and black. Does not untap during your untap phase. And you can tap it to gain control of target creature. Lose control of that creature if you lose control of this. And if it leaves play or becomes untapped, bury the creature. So you have to find a way to untap it, basically, and you can do a lot of taking out other creatures with that. It's an interesting one. And again, you had other multicolor cards. Probably the one that was most famous in terms of multicolors from this set was Stormbind. Stormbind was a red-green enchantment that let you do sort of the Land's Edge thing, where you could discard lands from your hand to do 2 damage to any target. Could be quite useful.
That one actually was like, current value is like almost $12.
Interesting. I think it got a reprint, so probably value went down a little. Tomato soup, go for it.
Throw it out.
Oh, it expired?
No,
it's
like this
it's
buildup.
leaking. Yeah, the can's leaking. It's no good. Wings of Esthir. Enchant creature. Gains flying, first strike, and +1 attack. For those of courage, even the sky holds no limit. So again, to set up a reasonably powerful flying creature, a little bit of extra risk, investing an extra
Did you
card
say you
in
had
it.
the Swords of Plowshares? Swords of Plowshares?
I couldn't find one. I usually ran other versions of Swords to Plowshares. I
Okay.
preferred them in my early days. Spectral Shield, again white and blue, enchant creature, +2 defense, and that creature cannot be the target of further spells. What can be stronger shield than concealment? Have you ever defeated an enemy you didn't know existed?
You showed 2 of the top 3 cards.
Yes. Hymn of Rebirth. Take target creature from any graveyard and put it directly into play under your control as though it was just summoned. So this is basically the card Resurrection, except that was 2 white and 2. This is a green, a white, and 3, a little bit more expensive, and more color dependent.
Ooh, do you have this
There
one?
will come soft rains and springs shall be amongst us. A welcome friend, Kildrorn Priest.
The Fire Covenant. Do you have that one?
I don't know.
That's a cool one.
It is a cool looking one.
It's a dragon.
I've seen pretty much. I used to have a polar kraken too. Polar kraken is renowned as one of the worst creatures ever made because it costs 11, 3 blue and 8, and you get an 11/11 creature for it. But I think it comes into play tapped, and it's trample, and its cumulative upkeep sacrifice a land, so it eats through your lands in a hurry, and yeah, just for the amount you had to cost to play it, which it's very hard to get into play. It can, I mean, 11/11 2 swings is enough to kill a player most times, but it's still pretty
Evil Snowman.
brutal. Yeah, Kildror and Frostbeast. Basically, this is the version of Thick Basilisk that came over to Ice Age.
Makes me
White
think
and
of
green,
that
2/4.
big creature from.
At the end of combat, destroy all creatures blocking or blocked by Kildror and Frostbeast. It doesn't have to damage them. It's not death touch. It's just anything that it's in combat with gets destroyed.
Makes me think of that big ice creature there from Frozen.
Kinda. 2 of my warriors found that the creature was dangerous not only in combat, but also in simple proximity. These are the Restless. We used to like these too, but again, it works wonders with lure. All your creatures have to block it. Oh look, they all die. And then here's some artifacts. Icy Manipulator, another straight up reprint, and this one is interesting in that they cut it after Unlimited. This was one of those cards that I guess they thought might be too powerful, or for whatever other reason. When they made Revised, Icy Manipulator didn't make the cut from Alpha Beta Unlimited to Revised. It was gone. And then 4th edition didn't bring it back either, but they put it in Ice Age. And people were very happy to see it at first. I think when it was first printed, it was like an $8 or $10 card.
Stove.
Now it's been reprinted so much, it doesn't
What?
Stove
matter
is
as
weird.
much.
Why?
I try to turn on one element, it turns into a completely different one.
Yeah, don't use that side.
Don't use the right side. We got an issue there.
That Icy Manipulator is only like 98 cents.
Oh, I know. It's not worth anything now, but at the time it was a big deal that this got a reprint. It's only an uncommon, it's not even a rare. But it's a very useful card, and was particularly in the early days of the game. Pay 1 to tap target artifact, creature, or land. It's very diverse, and there are cards you could combo with it, like Howling Line or Winter Orb for extra effect as well. Scavengers who first found it called it the Bone Crank. Not a bad name, I'd say. The art design is very different. The original was just like an orb being held in the hand, like a palantir.
Too bad you didn't have that out. You could have just showed it.
No, I suppose I could have, but... Pentagram of the Ages. Same casting cost, 4 for an artifact. You pay 4 and tap to prevent all damage to you from one source. Useful effect, but to keep 4 up to use it could be very frustrating. And it does not prevent the damage from the same source later in the turn or whatever. Take this item, for instance. How would it destroy us, Relic Bane? I think that's a bit of a dig at the people who are so worried about the pentagrams on Unholy Strength that they had to remove from the background for 4th edition and Demonic Tutor. But, yeah, this one is obviously a little bit different design. Jester's Cap and Jester's Mask were 2 of the more sought-after cards on launch. Again, you had things like Deflection, which I, again, didn't find a copy of, and Blinking Spirit. Deflection let you change the target of a spell, so it's sort of like a counter spell, but let you gain control of it in some ways, depending on the spell. If it was something that targeted things, that could be useful, but pretty narrow. The Jester's Mask, I had a copy until recently, but I foolishly traded it in just before doing this.
If you want, you can show it.
Well, if I wanted, I could show any number of things, but basically, yeah, the Jester's Mask cost 5 and came into play tapped, and you had to pay 1, tap and sacrifice it to go and make your opponent a new hand of however many cards they had, I think, from their deck, so you could really mess with them a little bit. This messed with them in a different way, so you could use it as soon as you played it if you had enough mana, but it costs 4 and then 2 to use. Sacrifice Jester's Cap. Look through that player's library and remove any three of those cards from the game. Reshuffle that library afterwards. So this did havoc on combo decks if you could get rid of one of their key combo pieces. Or when there's really powerful cards that were restricted, you could remove those. Or other strategic cards that you could remove that were going to cause you headaches. Just the idea of being able to mess with your opponent's deck so directly inspired a lot of people. This was the chase card of the set when the set first came out. And it was going for about $25 back then. It's not worth anywhere near as much now because it's just too slow and the effect is usually not that great. Most formats don't have restricted cards anymore, and combos usually have built-in redundancies. And
Yeah, it's like $7.95.
yeah, it's not anywhere near what it was. Zern Orb, on the other hand, this card really picked up. It took a while for people to realize how strong this was, but being able to just throw this out for free, and it could buy you extra turns, if nothing else. Just having the ability, oh look, I'm going to die this turn, well I can sacrifice 1 or 2 lands to give myself enough life to stay alive. That in itself made this card worth using. And then there were other combo things you could do with it if, you had reasons to sacrifice your lands. Even if you're common decks that ran things like Armageddon. Oh look, at least I'm going to get some value out of my lands before they disappear. I'll gain some life, or other more brutal things that came later. Nowadays it combos very nicely with things like Fast Bond and Crucible of Worlds. You can get a whole cycle going there, or you got a Strip Mine and such things. That's combos nicely too, but Zern Orb could give you some value with even more and to pay for those Fast Bond activations.
Got water to go down there.
I will go to any length to achieve my goal. Eternal life is worth any sacrifice. Zer the Enchanter. Then we've got this. I get the idea this was supposed to be a fixed Mox, because the Moxen were incredibly powerful and broken. And this definitely gives a similar effect, but it's much powered down because you have to pay to charge it. So, a 0-cost artifact, and you can pay 1 and tap it to put a charge counter on the amulet. You have to note what type of mana was used to pay this activation cost. So basically, if you use blue mana, you make a note that you charged it with blue mana, and then when you remove the charge counter to add a mana, you get whatever color mana you put into it. So, the one card apparently it's actually gone up. This card was pretty much worthless for a long time just because charging it was so weird. But anything that costs 0 these days can be abused in one way or the other.
Back. Okay, Founder.
But it is an interesting one. And then we've got, speaking of 0-cost artifacts, here's Urza's Bauble. This inspired Mishra's Bauble later on, but 0-cost artifact, you can tap and sacrifice the Bauble to choose a card at random from the target player's hand. Look at that card. Ignore this ability if that player has no cards in hand, and then draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So you get to look at one card at random from their hand.
It's okay.
Yeah, again, any 0-cost artifact, especially if you can sacrifice it for some sort of effect, like this one, drawing a card, certainly has potential to be abused in some way or the other.
What?
Is it good, right?
Yeah.
Yes. We got Soul Device Simulacrum. A
Oh my
2/4
goodness.
creature for 4.
That makes me think of Mark Hamill, old, like in The Last Jedi.
It does look a little like him, doesn't it? Man, that's sad. He didn't look anything like this in 1995.
Nope.
No.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
Cumulative upkeep of 1 colorless, and you can pay to have sort of a fire breathing effect. They look human until they bleed. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It is neat art. It was never a great creature. That stupid cumulative upkeep again, but Jack Black. Well,
Yeah, a
I can
little.
almost see that too. Anyway, then we're getting into some of the lands. Now, we'll show some basics when we open the starter deck, I think. But I love the basic land designs in this game. But here's a few of the non-basics, and just as you also had Ice Flow, which could lock down a creature as long as Ice Flow remained tapped, and the creature wouldn't untap either.
Oh, that's a 6 top card.
Yeah, I know. This one is another one that, like land-based decks, and there's certain combos and stuff that people do with it now. At the time, cumulative upkeep of 2 life, and when it comes into play, you have to sacrifice another land. It was just too much downside, but now there's tricks you can do that make it more worthwhile. The upside is substantial on this. You cannot attack. That's
The art
another
is cool,
downside.
though.
But all damage dealt to you is reduced to 0, so basically this thing can keep you alive. And if you don't pay the upkeep, it just dies. So then, if you're playing a lands deck, sometimes you have ways to play multiple lands a turn. There's ways of returning lands from your graveyard. You can keep bringing it back. It does have a strong effect, but it's got a lot of downsides you have to manage and take into account too. Then we've got, here's Underground River. This is one of the classic Painlands. So this is a whole section that I've been meaning to get into, because 4th edition, as I mentioned earlier, really messed with multicolored decks. Basically, there were no lands that provided different colors of mana in 4th edition at all. It heavily encouraged, in that sense, playing monocolored decks. You had cards like Gaia's Liege, which liked monocolored decks. You had cards like Nightmare, black in general, white in general. Like, even blue, with double blue for counterspell and things like that, Lord of Atlantis. Monocolored decks were never more heavily implied as being a preferred way to play as they were in 4th edition. And for 2 months after 4th edition released, there were no multicolor lands that were in the current set until Ice Age came out. And then the allied colors only. These were replacing the old dual lands, which the dual lands, you had all 10 color combinations. This only had the 5 allied colors. So you had blue-black, blue-white, white-green, green-red, and red-black. Those 5, you got these lands, which could tap for a colorless, or either of the 2 colors, but it dealt you 1 damage. And then, the month later, when they did Chronicles, they reprinted City of Brass, which could tap for any color of mana, but dealt you a damage. Couldn't get colorless for free out of it. So between those 6 lands, the 5 Ice Age lands, and the City of Brass, that's all the multicolor producing lands that were available for a while. At least that were any good. There were some other ones printed in Homelands, which were horrible. And there's the other series, which we'll get to in a second, which weren't good from Ice Age either. But even those were allied color only. So it was really tough to build a stable mana base if you wanted to play more than 2 colors, say. Even 3 colors was doable with some Painlands and City of Brasses, but it was a lot trickier than it used to been when dual lands were everywhere. And eventually they stabilized that a bit, but it was quite the reboot on the land side, especially, but also the general power level of creatures, as we discussed before. Oh yeah, the Homelands triple land cycle was awful. Absolutely agree. Yeah, it was bad. So this is the other series that they had, was these slow lands, as we used to call them. If there are any depletion counters on Velt, it doesn't untap during your untap phase. And at the beginning of your upkeep, remove a depletion counter from it. So those might be basically stun counters under current rules. And you tap it for, again, allied colors. There's 2 different colors you can get, and you have to put a depletion counter on it. Yeah. So you can get your 2 colors, but you can only use this every other turn. That just impeded your mana base too much to make them really worthwhile. So this cycle of lands was almost never used. People much preferred the Pain lands, which didn't have to cause pain if you didn't need the mana, but could get you either color if you did. And paying a life every now and then to get your color was deemed far preferable to having to wait an extra turn sometimes to get your extra color. And this couldn't tap for just for a colorless to avoid the depletion counter either, which made them, yeah, definitely the worst option. So those were the two different cycles for allied colored lands. In this, they're both rare, I believe. The Glacial Chasm and Ice Flow are both uncommons. So there's a look at a bunch of the cards I was able to put out there. So let's wrap up by opening up one of these starter decks. Again, I've been holding onto these for a while. Which one to open? Well, I did notice that this one here has got a loose corner. These usually wrap underneath and are sealed at the bottom.
So do that one.
This
then.
one, yeah, might as well do this one.
also got the
I think
thing
it just
like
didn't
the-
get folded the right way when they were sealing
Ooh, I
and
can't
stamping
wait,
the side.
says Elvin.
So, some brand new. I'm going to keep one of these sealed just for nostalgia's sake, and maybe for the future down, maybe for the 40th or 50th anniversary of Ice Age. We'll do the other one, but I'm going to open one today for the 30th anniversary
Ryan, big eyes.
and for the
Do we want to
the
make
nostalgia
it so it's
of
down
it.
a little bit more? The camera. So here.
Want to look
Just-
at, angle it down a little
Yeah.
more.
Sorry. There
But
we go.
yeah,
Might be
back
easier
from
to-
when I started playing Magic, all the way back in '95 with my
Could that
brother.
loose wrapping be a repack? No, it wasn't a repack.
I don't think so. I think it's just when again they
We've had
wrapped
them,
and sealed it.
and we've also
it
had it in
didn't go-
storage for a while too. And
Yeah, but I think it just got folded the wrong way when the thing was stamping, because the seal looks good everywhere else, and there's no way to get anything in there else out of there. And there's nothing, honestly, for most of the history of Ice Age, there's been not many cards in it that would be worth doing repacks on, to be honest. It's starting to change a little
bit.
bit.
The most valuable card is $26.80.
Yeah, and these go for, over $100 US now. I think Canadian it's close to $200 for one of these. They're getting harder to find. But back when I picked this up, between 10 and 15 years ago, I think it was only, on the order of $10 to $12 maybe. Maybe even
Yeah.
less, might have been $8. I'm not even sure. So there's
Where did
usually
you
a
get it?
pull tab.
It's
You see,
around the silver thing.
this is around. I ordered this just before they made the change where you weren't allowed to ship from stores in the United States up to Canada for sealed product.
Okay.
And this was one of the last things I got
For Wizards of the Coast old stuff, right?
for anything sealed product. You can't buy from American stores and have them ship it across the border. You have to get it through Canadian distributors.
Really?
That's from officially from the big stores, which is one of the ones I ordered this from. So there's the seal. You do a little pull tab, and get it off the wrapper.
If you
So
look at the
this
quicker
is
leaves, there are different spots too.
officially opened. So let's see what we got in here. So it's shrink wrapped inside as well.
Would I take a fork to eat yogurt?
Necropotence would be nice.
I don't know.
Oh, there's an Ashen Ghoul.
Just switch it out.
What the?
Huh?
Okay, this is not packaged how I was expecting. Because that's uncommons there. I was expecting lands there. And then commons would be at the back.
Maybe they package them differently.
The shrink wrap all looks good, but this is definitely not how I watched a couple from open boosters, and this is not how his were inside. But yeah, I have no reason to believe that this is.
It could have just been a mix-up.
Like I said, some of these were printed and assembled, I think, in the United States and some in Belgium, so maybe it was a different batch.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we start with the uncommon since they're here?
Sure.
So we got an Ashen Ghoul. Again, we've already seen that. Nothing. Oh, we got an Icy.
There you
Again, that would have been very exciting when this first came out. Nowadays, not so much, but I still like the card. Nice to get a fresh one. Pyroclasm, very playable. Sunstone. I had one of these when I was a little kid.
Oh,
Sacrifice
that
a
looks
snow-covered
cool.
land to have all creatures deal no damage in combat this turn. I dispute Relic Ben's hysterical allegations, Commissioner, but it is true that these artifacts can be dangerous. Then we've got an Order of the White Shield, another solid uncommon.
I like that card.
Soul
Oh.
Barrier. When an opponent casts a summoned spell, Soul Barrier deals 2 damage to him or her. That player may pay 2 to prevent that damage.
I want to see you get Illusions of Grandeur.
Yeah, see, that's a card that became a combo piece. You would donate it to your opponent, so you would play it. Icequake, another good
I just
playable
like
card.
the art.
Here's Force Void, a much better condition one than the one I showed earlier. Withering Wisps enchantment.
That art is interesting.
At the end of the turn, if there are no creatures in play, bury Withering Wisps. Withering Wisps deals 1 damage to each creature and each player by paying a black. Okay, so this is basically a version of Pestilence. You cannot spend more black this way each turn than the number of snow-covered swamps you control. So it's cheaper, but it has a restriction. All right, and there's our book. So those were our uncommons. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of them. That's consistent with what I've heard. Most sets a little bit later came with a couple more than that. Here's our book, and here's our rares. So we're right into our rares. We got a way to go.
Do you want to start with the rares, or do you want to?
Well, usually I save rares for last, but since this is one here, we know the next 3 behind it are gonna be. So
Okay.
should I save the other 2?
Yeah.
You want to clip this for now? Do the uncommons as a... I don't know. Just in case. And let's see what our commons are. We got a Balduvian Barbarians. We've got... Ooh, this is one I didn't find one of, but I used to have these going around. Again, most of these cards, so even if I didn't have them, but I know I did, I know other people who were playing with them, so these were all cards we used to play with all the time. Balduvian Shaman, back when all we had was a little bit of Ice Age and Fallen Empires and 4th edition. Cleric, 1/1 for a blue. You can tap it to permanently change the text of target white enchantment you control that does not have cumulative upkeep by replacing all instances of one color word with another. For example, you may change all counters black spells to counters blue spells. It cannot change mana symbols, and that enchantment now has cumulative upkeep 1. So, interesting.
Well, it's neat that you're getting some ones that you didn't have that you showed tonight.
Yeah. I hope we get more of the ones that we're
I
missing.
like that one.
I do like the art on this one. It's one of my favorite arts. As a card, it's a little bit awkward to use, but
I would totally.
and you can
give
see
that
they're
bear
still
my
using
fish.
the same older mana symbol for white.
I would not try and keep my fish from that bear. It could have all the fish.
Yeah. There's a Dark Ritual. Always good to have more of those. Pick night.
I'm sorry.
A Dark Rar Unicorn. Nice and fresh.
For me. Mine. Sorry. I just like the art. I love the art. I want this on my wall. Like, blown
Norrit.
up.
Now, interestingly, Norrit was one of 2 cards that they put in the Scry magazine as preview cards for Ice Age. So, I know a lot of people who had them. And this is a sort of a fixed version of Nettling Imp. Nettling Imp was a 1/1 for 3 with this tap to... with the force target non-wall creature to attack. So this has got that same ability where you can force your opponent's creatures to attack. But it costs 1 more to play, and it's got the ability to tap it to untap a blue creature.
You know what that character reminds me of?
But this imp was very well known, and plays great with Royal Assassin.
That picture
Incidentally.
reminds me of Kelsey's Grammar's Beast.
Oh, maybe. But yeah, Norrit, I'm glad to get one of those again because, like I said, that was a good one. And it was very iconic. Oh, there's the Goblin Zappers that I mentioned I couldn't find.
Oh, nice.
So you can
That's one pointy chin.
one Goblin for 2.
That was a pointy chin, yes.
Oh, for sure. Pay 2 red and tap it. Target creature you control cannot be blocked this turn. At end of combat, destroy that creature and Goblin Zappers. Or pay 4 red and tap it. Target creature you control cannot be blocked this turn. At the end of the combat, destroy that creature. But your Zappers survive. So, way to force something through, but at cost. Anyway, it's another Goblin you could throw in your Goblin deck. That was the main thing about it. The Norrit. Oh, I love the art on the Norrit, and like I said, it's a useful effect, but 4 is a little bit too much to cost for it. If I wanted that effect, I'd usually just run Niddling Imp. But it looks cool, and it brings back memories. What else we got?
Ooh,
Disenchant.
that's cool.
Again, staple card, or used to be. We're getting a lot of the staples in here, so that's good. We didn't get a Swords to Plowshares, unfortunately. That would have been a very good pull.
Orcish Farmer.
Orcish Farmer. Mind Gravel. I do very much like Swords to Plowshares. Use it in a lot of cards. There's a Giant Growth. The only boon that... well, no, that and Dark Ritual both made it over. But they changed up the Healing Salve, I think. And there's the Elvish Healer.
There you go.
So Cleric. This is basically a Samite Healer, except they added 1 to the casting cost, gave it an extra toughness. Prevent 1 damage to any non-green creature or any player, or up to 2 damage to any green creature. So it got a little buff on preventing damage from green creatures as well. The Kaldorans keep the orcs at bay, and we train their healers. Most human bargains aren't as fair. And we got a Rhyme Dryad.
Oh, interesting.
Armor of Faith. I remember this one too.
Oh, that's a hand wrapped around her.
Exactly. So target creature gets +1/+1, and you can pay a white. The creature Armor of Faith gets an extra toughness until end of turn. So you can pump its defense as well as getting +1/+1 for the 1. So Holy Strength was +1/+2, just straight up for 1 white before. Now this is interesting
Ryan
too.
says he used that card a lot.
Because look at this mana symbol. This is when they changed over around this time, 4th edition, to these new white mana symbols that look like the sun. But one of the early cards we pulled, where was it? Where was it? Where was I looking at that? Was it in this pack, or was it one of the previous ones? Yeah, Phlegia. Still has the old white mana symbol.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So there's a difference there. This one missed the update apparently. There's a few little errors like that in some of these older sets, but there's an Illusionary Forces. Again, one of the few 4/4 flyers in this set.
Ooh, I like
There's
that
the
one.
Meteor Shower I was telling you about. So a red and double X.
I
Meteor
never
Shower.
noticed that. What a unique misprint. Yeah.
Meteor. Well, again, I think all copies of the card are that, so it's not really a misprint in that sense. But
yeah.
Meteor Shower deals X+1 damage divided any way you choose among any number of target creatures and/or players.
That is neat art.
It is neat art, and it's a neat effect, but the double X just makes it too expensive to really be worth it most of the time.
Oh, man.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Oh, why not all of them? Right. I do hope we get a Disintegrate. There's a Zern Spellcaster.
I like that art.
I do like that art. That art is impressive. So...
Incinerate.
There's the Incinerate that I couldn't
Nice.
find. So, Again, I've got this art because Incinerate, Lurgoyf, Icy Manipulator, and Necropotence were all the 4 cards they chose to do foil versions of in the Deckmasters box, which I've covered in the past. But yeah, this was the original art on Incinerate. 3 damage to target creature or player for 2 as an instant. No creature damaged by Incinerate can regenerate this turn. Yes, I think toast is an appropriate description. And basically, yeah, this was designed to make a more fair version of Lightning Bolt, basically. Next, we have Brian Shaman. Finehorn Elves, always good to have extra copies. We've got Gangrenous Zombie. Again, the one that likes to blow up and deal damage to everything. Tinderwall, again, one of my favorites.
I remember you when you were teaching me how to play. You used that a lot.
Yeah, this one's got a little spot on the border here, which is unfortunate. Warning, it's not a card I use much. Zern Enchanter.
Also, Riker.
Kinda. Stone Rain.
Oh, that's neat.
Classic.
That is a neat art.
You were answering the phone when this one came up in our discussion.
Okay.
But may the forces that took Argoth beneath the waves never come among us again. Yeah. And then we're into our lands.
That's neat.
So here's a plains. You can see a little butterfly there in the foreground.
Yeah, all right. Have a good night, Founder. I'm going to just...
We've got an island. I like this island. It almost looks like an iceberg, but it is an island. Probably not my favorite art of the islands in the set, but
I like it a lot.
But
actually.
overall, yeah, I do like the overall aesthetic. There's a
That's
mountain.
a nice one.
It is a nice one. Get the craggy effect with the snow and a little lake there with some reflection. Doesn't show the peak in the background, just the rocks nearby, which is interesting. But and we've got an island with some trees on it and
That's
some
neat.
other rock columns at the front.
I really like what they did with these lands. They're neat.
So do I. They've got the little artist signature there on this one. And cinematics. 95. Next we have the other island. So we've got all the regular islands now. Add blue to your mana pool. No snow-covered lands yet. I've seen some of these Ice Age starter decks have as few as 3 snow-covered lands in them. Some of them have 6 or 7. Like,
That doesn't count as a snow-covered land?
no, it's just mountain.
Okay.
There's a specific, it'll say snow-covered this or that.
Oh, okay.
And then there's specific art. Yeah, so
Ah,
here's snow-covered mountain.
Those are nice.
They are. And again, they've got some other mechanical advantages in the game too. So I'll stack those separately. Back when I was a kid, for some reason, snow-covered mountain was the most common one I'd ever get. I had double that as any other type.
I like that mountain.
It is nice. You get the trees in the foreground.
The art is just so well done.
Yes, I really appreciated the art. I like the art from the original game as well, but I just found the art on these Ice Age ones was even better for the lands. Here's a swamp.
That is...
It looks like a swamp.
It's
Misty and
It's almost pretty, though.
cold.
Like, I mean, the swamp look that nice is impressive.
Yeah. Here's a snow-covered swamp. This one I think doesn't look as nice as the other one, but... This one with
I like that
rushes
one.
isn't bad. Still not my favorite of the swamps from Ice Age, though.
It kind of looks like watercolor, right? The art.
A little bit, yeah, that one.
Ooh.
Here's the same plains with the butterfly. Here's the plains with the clouds. snow-covered plains, the moon.
That's nice.
It is nice. Footprints in the snow.
You don't often see like just a partial moon picture either. Like that's
There's a
a
forest.
little different.
Some big trees without their leaves, and then the evergreens in the background. Some snow on the ground. I do like that art. Snow-covered forest with the boulder and the tree trunks.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this is one of the snow-covered lands I really like the look of. Is that one of each? No, not quite yet. We don't have the island. The island, snow-covered island. First of all, islands are always popular. Secondly, it's got some like what are they called? Like Easter Island
Yeah.
heads on
I
it.
was looking at when I was going through the
This was
set.
my favorite of the regular forests as well for the Ice Age ones. I just like the combination again of the deciduous and evergreen trees with the snow. I think it looks really nice.
Oh man. Oh.
There's another island. Same one we've seen that
I like it,
before. We're not down to our last 3 yet. There's another island. I'm getting lots of islands, just not the snow-covered island. Yeah, lots of islands.
There.
Mountain.
We got a mountain.
We're down to our last 3 cards. Not yet. We'll be after this one. So this is our last land, last basic land. There's the plains. So we didn't get, before we turn these, I'm going to show some of the stuff with the basic lands. I'll just grab the stack here. So again, I mentioned this early on, but the art on the plains all connect to make a panoramic view. So you can see sort of the flock of birds there. And the skyline lines up. The skyline lines up here with that tree branch.
That's really neat.
And then even the snow-covered one fits in. So you go from the moonscape over the snow, the footprints, to clear sky and the sun rising in clouds over on this side.
That's really neat.
It is really neat. I like it. There's the snow-covered island we didn't get with the heads on it in the pack. And the other forest. Is there one in here?
That's beautiful, says Sylvan.
Oh, come on. Where's the other forest?
I don't know.
I know I've seen it.
Do you just pass it? No.
No. Oh, come on. Why is there every forest except the one I want to show?
Well,
Anyway. Oh, no, it was the swamp. Duh. Anyway. That's what I was looking for. In any case. The swamp that... Anyway, the one that I really like has a log in the foreground, which looks very realistic. I would say almost lovely for a swamp. Anyway, here we are to our 3 rares. So let's see what our 3 Ice Age rares from the starter deck were. We already know one. It's the Wittigo. Sort of a Yeti type creature. 6 mana. When Wittigo comes into play, put 6 +1/+1 counters on it. So you're getting a 6/6 for your 6, sort of. During your upkeep, put a +1/+1 counter on Wittigo if
that's neat.
if it has blocked or been blocked since your last upkeep. Otherwise, remove a +1/+1 counter from Wittigo. Ignore this effect if there are no counters left on Wittigo, because it's dead if there's no counters on it. But yeah, or well, I guess it might not be if you have a enchantment on it to buff its power and toughness. But anyways, so yeah, as long as it's fighting, it could get stronger and stronger. If it's not fighting, well, not so much. Still, it's interesting. Our second rare. Oh, we got a brushland. This is probably the least valuable of the pain lands, but the pain lands are still useful playable cards, so there's nothing wrong with that. And our third and final. I like the pumpkins, the art and the mist on this. Not much to say about it otherwise, but it's a pain land. And our third and final one, Chaos Lord. There was a Chaos Moon in here too, but this was 7/7 first strike for 7. And then it's got some downsides. Chaos Lord can't attack the first turn it comes into play on a side, except the turn it first comes into play. So when you first play it, you can attack. If it had haste. Or wait a minute. Chaos Lord can attack. No. Okay.
That's
yes.
a rare?
It's got haste. Yes, it's a rare.
It's a 55-cent.
Yeah, I know. It's garbage. It's not good. During your upkeep, count the number of permanents. If that number is even, target opponent gains control of Chaos Lord. So, depending on how many things are in play, this thing is going to keep changing hands. And yeah, it has haste on every turn except the turn you played it. So they're going to gauge whether or not they want to play something by, how many are in play if they're thinking. And you're never going to get to really use this very often. Nobody ever played that card.
The art is really neat, though. I will say that.
The Witigo is more playable, and the Brushland is very playable. But yeah, those are our 3 rares. What's the thing? Overall, could have done worse. Like I said, Brushland was I'd say good, and the other 2 not so much. But they're interesting anyway. Overall, we did pretty good with our commons and uncommons. I would have liked to see a Swords to Plowshares, but to be honest, I've got enough of them to play with anyway, so I'm not too fussed about it. And I'll keep my other ones sealed here. But that was a lot of fun. I do like I said, I just love the flavor of this set. Thumb through the uncommons here again quickly. We got the Withering Wisps, the Force Void, an Ice Quake, Soul Barrier, Order of the White Hand, Sunstone, Pyroclasm, Icy Manipulator, and an Ashen Ghoul. Like I said, Icy Manipulator has been a stable playable card, so is Pyroclasm. Order of the White Shield used to be. I know now it's nothing to shake your stick at. I still use Ice Quake sometime if I'm playing a deck that has a focus on land destruction. So, of our 9, almost half of them. I might try Force Void, because counter a spell unless that spell's controller pays an extra 1. If they're not expecting it, if they tap out to play something, countering their spell and drawing a card for 3 mana is not bad. It might be fun to throw that in. But yeah, a lot of these others aren't great. I have a deck that has run Ashen Ghouls, along with other creatures that like to come back from the graveyard. So even that, might see some play. Who knows? So overall, did good on the uncommons. The rares, could be worse. Brushland is probably the last one I would have chosen, but it's still one of the pain lands, and those are playable. The Witigo is interesting. The Chaos Lord less so. It does make you think a little, but not enough to make it into a deck. And then we've got our commons, which we did get some good ones. Finehorn Elf is one of the top ones. Incinerate, for sure as well. Some cards that I didn't find in my pulling, so that's good. We were able to cover off those.
And I stole a unicorn from you.
Disenchant is good. Yes, you stole the unicorn. That's fine. Norrit, I was just happy to see again for nostalgia's sake. Like I said, it was a giveaway promo with another card, which I forget, a Dark Ritual. Another very... I didn't get a counterspell, but that's fine. Well, the Force Void's a counterspell, I guess, but not this counter spell, which honestly, among blue cards, of all the reprints they've made of counter spell, this is still one of my favorite arts. I still think it's just nicely done. There are better ones, but And I do like the classic original art, but I think they did a good job on this. Is when I'm looking for black bordered versions. That's one of my earlier picks, anyway. So, but yeah, I've always thought they did a really good job on Ice Age for the theming and the art. Yeah, the power level is down if you look at what alpha and stuff originally, but that's all part of the plan. This is actually, it sort of hit rock bottom just before Ice Age, I would say. Ice Age was a step up. The selective reprints and Chronicles helped a bit. Homelands was again a little bit on the downside. It was still designed mainly during that phase of keeping things low power level as one of those last expansions that was meant to be independent. It wasn't supposed to be designed as part of the block rotation, really. It just got thrown in there. And then you got into Mirage, and they started to creep things back up very slowly with Mirage. Tempest block hit, and they started to rise a little faster. Urza's block hit, and they went nuts. And there was sort of the Silver Age for a while.
Face, are you done with it?
Sure. Stop my hand talking there. But yeah, in terms of the power level and stuff, the new mechanics, they were pretty restrictive, but the cantrip idea wasn't bad. It was just the implementation took a little while to work out. And
Excuse me.
they took a while to really find out how to balance and make good use of cumulative upkeep. It was much better by the time they used it in Cold Snap. Even alliances, I'd say they did a slightly better job. And alliances started to introduce the pitch spells and things like that. It had it was a good complement, and it definitely had a lighter tone to it as well. Generally speaking, a little bit as the world was starting to bounce back at that time. They also had what was I going with that?
I know.
But yeah, the push to get back away from the heavy monocolor emphasis in 4th edition was very apparent in this set. You had lots of cards like the Brine Shamans, like the Elvish Healers, that gave bonuses if you were playing with one of the allied colors. And you had the introduction of the Pain Lands to replace the dual lands that had already been phased out. Was a big help for deck building where you wanted to have multiple colors in your deck. These were great additions with Ice Age. The way they kept their core of the game by reprinting directly some of the main cards, the Disenchants, the Counterspell, Power Sink, bringing back Icy Manipulator, bringing back Stone Rain, bringing back a lot of the staples, and then another batch of the staples where they reprinted extra versions of them if they didn't mind you playing with, an extra 4 copies. You could have your 4 Lionel Elves and your 4 Fine Elves, things like that. They did another whole round like that, and then they had cards that were more unique and more diverse. Variation, where they actually changed how it worked mechanically, like the Animate Dead to Dance of the Dead, like the Bind Your Grasp, stuff like that. But still very familiar to what the original one was. They toned down the flying again. They toned down some of the power issues they'd had and reworked and introduced new mechanics like the ability to mess with your opponent's deck directly with Jester's Cap, Jester's Mask. A lot of neat new ideas, and I really think that helped their relaunch of the game based off the same steady core. They keep the power level a little bit lower because it had been absolutely nuts with the early launch. Keep those cards sort of legendary. They had their reserved list shortly thereafter, not when this set released, but after Chronicles came out. They started to say, okay, we're not going to reprint some of these things. They started to design for blocks. So you had Ice Age alliances, you had soon the Mirage Visions Weatherlight block, and then into Tempest block. and you started to get this cycle of a big set with 2 supplementary sets that fit the theme for the block. This set didn't have that yet. They only made alliances as a supplementary set, and they just threw in homelands to make it work, basically, because it was happened to be released between the two, although it wasn't designed as part of that. And then that became the pattern going forward for over a decade. It really shaped how the game was going to evolve, because a lot of new card games, you get the initial launch set, you get a couple of expansions, and then they don't know what to do. And it's really hard to get into that pattern where you can keep a continued release going. And Magic had its own IP, didn't have to worry about license renewals like the Decipher games. And it had a strong core. And it's really that transition into block play, which I know they've abandoned now, but that kept them going for a long time. And I still think that was one of their best periods. The game had a strong base. It forced creativity, because a lot of us started playing when those cards were not the really powerful cards from Alpha Beta Unlimited were not easy to find anymore. So they had this chase element to them, but what we could get a hold of, there was lots of Fallen Empires on the shelf. Fourth edition and Ice Age came out, and that was a good supply of base cards as well for deck building. Chronicles gave us some access to some of the older things there. Hernanda Djinns, the City of Brasses, the Urza's Lands. The Yeti I mentioned from Legends there, the Mountain Yeti. All kinds of interesting stuff was in there that was playable and useful at the time. And, we enjoyed it, and we worked with what we had. And then Homelands came out, and Alliances later on was even more interesting. And then, it just kept things going. The thematic elements were similar enough to the base set with the ice overlay that it made sense. Things were a little toned down. And then they shifted again and went to a tropical theme with Mirage. So they kept it shifting, kept it going, and I think it really, the timing, the elements came together very well, and it helped. You look at modern sets, like I said, they usually have a lot more rules text, even for the commons, and it enters the battlefield of triggers and all this other stuff to keep track of every time somebody plays stuff. The game was a lot simpler. It was a lot easier, and it was easier to focus on the flavor. Even though you had these different artists with different styles, it came off across quite coherently. And the addition of all these flavor text characters, even if they didn't get a legendary copy of the character itself, eventually they did that down the road, but it built a story, and it was it inspired the imagination, and it did it in a way that was very evocative. I think Ice Age was a very successful set in that way, and I have great fond memories of it in many ways. The newer sets, some of them are pretty good. I enjoyed Tarkir Dragonstorm.
Blimborough.
Blimborough was nice and cute in its own way. But Foundations, I grew up in this period. I think that the multicolors are honestly overemphasized, that stuff now. It's not really needed to anywhere near the extent that it is. And 4th edition proved that. I think that it's good that they've incorporated more, but I think they've just pushed it a little too far now. You don't need split mana symbols and all these extra things on cards in a base learning set like Foundations, in my opinion. And I'm not a huge fan of all the crossover stuff. I think they're doing too much. What do they call that? Worlds Beyond or Galaxy?
I have no idea.
Anyways. The Tales of Middle-earth one, like I said, I'm a fan of Lord of the Rings, so I'm a bit of a sucker for that. I found it interesting rather than some of the others, but they're just doing it too much and relying on it too much.
I do kind of wish that they do a Willow one, though.
Well, there's lots of things that we'd like to see, but
I was looking at me picking up some Final Fantasy stuff. It's super crazy expensive.
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that is getting more and more expensive these days, for sure.
Should we give an update on what's coming up this week?
Sure, we could if you like.
All right. Hi, everybody. I am mostly a Pokemon person, and I do stuff with the kids. But he's the Magic person, and many other TCG persons. But on Thursday, we're gonna be doing some pack openings. I found this at Walmart. So we got the Zoroark V-Star box. We also have the Dialga V-Star box. They had the Palkia one. I wish I picked it up, but
It's an interesting mix of
Yeah.
packs in those. You've got 4 Lost Origin, 3 Chilling Rain, 2 Brilliant Stars, and
we might even open
Fusion
up
Strike.
some Journey Together. We'll see how the day goes.
Journey Together
He's gonna be
is
working,
fun. Yeah, I'm gonna be working.
And we even have some Destin
A
Rivals.
little bit of Destin Rivals left.
So,
Yep.
Um,
Hopefully something good in there.
So that's what's going to be happening Thursday. We're also working on our watch hours. So once we hit 4,000 watch hours, and hopefully we'll stick there a little bit for a while,
Would be nice.
we're going to have a celebration stream, and we're going to open a booster box of Fusion Strike. So, and we're also going to do our mini tin giveaway. So we do pack battles on Thursdays. And if you decide to donate your hit that you win, if you win a pack battle, you get your name in for a mini tin full of hits. But we're not going to ship the mini tin. You just get the hits.
Right. We tried that before, and shipping the mini tins
It's
makes it a
really
lot more
expensive, yeah.
and awkward. So
Yeah. Especially coming from Canada.
yeah,
So that's kind of what's going on. And on Saturday, we're doing Isabel's birthday stream. So
Fair
it'll be starting in the morning. And we'll see how long it goes. But he's got to
Yeah.
go to bed, so.
Yep.
But yeah, hopefully we'll see you guys Saturday
Hopefully.
and Thursday. I do have a raid set up if we're all good
Sure.
to
why
call it a
not?
night. It is after midnight.
Just a
here.
note though, if you are interested in these old sets, about a year ago I went through and discussed a whole bunch of them that I'd collected the actual set of. I didn't have enough Ice Age. Ice Age is a huge set, by the way. Aside from 4 of each basic land, so that's another 20 cards, there's also 121 commons, 121 uncommons, and 121 rares. So that puts you into the 183 or something like that cards total. Sorry, 383 cards, almost 400 cards in the set. Lots of rares to track down. Even uncommons, trying to keep track of them all. It's a big set, and part of that is because it was made to be a base set, and it's got lots of variety in it. But yeah, they just they don't structure sets quite the same way anymore, and but for the smaller sets, which are the ones that I tended to collect more because they're easier to collect and they still have a lot of good stuff in them. I've put up set discussions, I should say, not really reviews, of homelands, fallen empires, alliances, even stronghold, Portal 3 kingdoms, onslaught, or not? Was it onslaught? Yeah, I think it was. And yeah, a bunch of them. So if you're interested in that, feel free to go check out those old videos. They I don't know, I just enjoy looking at these old cards, old sets from time to time. I've got another one that I'm planning to do in the not so distant future. We're gonna take a look at Dark Steel, which is just after they changed to the modern frames, or at least what they called at the time modern frames. Got away from these old classic card borders, which I think was a bit of a step down personally, but it seems to have stuck for the most part. They've tweaked them a little bit over the years, so who knows.
So yeah, we do have a redirect set up. There is a link right here that you can use.
Hope you have a good night.
Yeah, I hope you have a good
Thanks
night.
for coming out and joining us, and yeah,
We'll see you soon. Please stick around for the raid, even if you just quickly pop in and say spocat raid and hit the like button. We'd appreciate that. JR does a lot for our channel. He's a great mod. I don't know what we do without him and all of our other mods, because our mods are awesome.
right.
So shout out to our mods. Thank you guys.
Thanks a
Have a
bunch.
good night. And we'll see you guys soon. Probably Thursday.
Probably.
Bye.
Bye for now.